The night Elena Cruz's past found her, she was holding a coffee pot and praying it wouldn't shatter when her hands started shaking. Marcus stood in the doorway of Moretti's like he owned it, jaw clenched, eyes hunting. 2 years of running, 6 months of hiding, and he'd still found her. The late-night diners kept eating. The kitchen kept cooking. Nobody knew the man blocking the exit had put her in the hospital twice. Nobody knew she'd been counting down to this moment since the day she'd fled. But the owner knew. Victor Moretti was already watching. If you want to see how Elena escapes the man who nearly destroyed her, stay with me until the very end of this story. And please, hit that like button and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. Now, let's begin. The coffee pot was warm in Elena's hands, but her fingers had gone cold. She'd been pouring refills for table 7, an older couple celebrating their anniversary with tiramisu and espresso, when the front door opened and the November wind pushed inside. She'd glanced up out of habit, the same automatic smile she gave every customer already forming on her lips. Then she saw his face. Marcus. The smile died. The world tilted. For one terrible second, Elena thought she might actually faint, might drop the coffee pot and collapse right there on the black and white tile floor of Moretti's, the upscale Italian restaurant where she'd worked for the past 6 months. The restaurant that was supposed to be her sanctuary, her secret, her safe place in a city big enough to disappear in. But Marcus was standing in the doorway, and the look on his face said he'd been searching for a very long time. Elena. His voice cut through the quiet dinner conversation, through the soft jazz playing on the sound system, through every fragile wall she'd built between her old life and this new one. We need to talk. The elderly man at table 7 looked up, mildly curious. The woman kept eating her tiramisu. Across the dining room, Lucy, the other waitress working the late shift, paused mid-step with a tray of pasta balanced on one hand. In the kitchen, someone dropped a pan with a clang that made Elena jump. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't do anything but stand there with the coffee pot growing heavier in her grip while Marcus walked toward her. He looked the same. God, he looked exactly the same. Same sharp jawline and cold blue eyes. Same expensive leather jacket he'd bought with money from his construction job, the one he'd lost because he couldn't show up sober 3 days in a row. Same way of walking. Slow, deliberate, like he had all the time in the world and knew you weren't going anywhere. I said we need to talk. He stopped 6 feet away, close enough that she could smell the cigarettes and whiskey. You're gonna make me repeat myself? Elena's throat had closed up. Her whole body had locked down, every muscle going rigid with a fear so familiar it felt like coming home to a house that had burned down years ago. She knew this fear, had lived with it for 3 years, had worn long sleeves in summer to hide the bruises and smiled through split lips and told the emergency room nurses she'd fallen down the stairs. Twice. She'd fallen down the stairs twice, according to the hospital records. I don't... Her voice came out hoarse, barely a whisper. She cleared her throat and tried again. I don't want to talk to you. That's too bad. Marcus smiled, but there was nothing warm in it, nothing human. Because I've been looking for you for a long time, baby. 2 years. You know how hard it is to find someone who doesn't want to be found? How many cities I've searched, how much money I've spent. The couple at table 7 had stopped eating. The man was frowning now, his hand moving to his wife's arm like he was ready to pull her away from something dangerous. Lucy had set down her tray and was backing toward the kitchen, her eyes wide. Elena should run. She knew she should run. There was a back door through the kitchen, an alley that led to the street, a whole city to disappear into. But her legs wouldn't move. Her body remembered what happened when she ran from Marcus, remembered the hospital, remembered the broken ribs and the concussion and the 3 stitches above her left eyebrow. Remembered his voice in her ear, "If you ever leave me again, I'll kill you. You need to leave." The words came from behind Marcus, low and quiet and absolutely certain. Elena's eyes shifted past Marcus's shoulder to the man standing in the doorway to the back office. Victor Moretti, the owner, the man she'd worked for every night for 6 months and barely spoken to beyond "yes, sir," and "the dinner rush was good tonight, Mr. Moretti." He was tall, 6'3", maybe 6'4", with dark hair starting to gray at the temples and the kind of face that looked like it had been carved from something harder than flesh. He wore expensive suits even on quiet Monday nights when only a handful of tables were full. He moved through the restaurant like a king touring his kingdom, polite but distant, watching everything with eyes that missed nothing. And he was looking at Marcus like a man looks at a problem that needs to be eliminated. Marcus turned, and Elena saw the exact moment he sized Victor up. Saw him take in the tailored suit, the calm expression, the way Victor stood with his hands loose at his sides like he'd never been in a fight in his life. Saw Marcus decide this was just another rich guy who thought money made him tough. "This is between me and my girl," Marcus said. "So why don't you mind your own business?" "This is my restaurant." Victor's voice never changed, never rose above that same quiet tone. "Which makes everything that happens here my business. The lady said she doesn't want to talk to you, so I'm going to ask you politely to leave." "Politely?" Marcus laughed, harsh and sharp. "You hear that, Elena? He's going to ask me politely." "I'm asking once." Victor took a step forward, and something in the way he moved made Elena's breath catch. There was no hesitation, no uncertainty, just a fluid, economical grace that belonged to someone who knew exactly how dangerous he was. "You can walk out, or I can have you removed. Your choice." For a long moment, nobody moved. The restaurant had gone completely silent. Even the jazz had faded into nothing. Or maybe Elena just couldn't hear it anymore over the sound of her own heartbeat hammering in her ears. Then Marcus turned back to Elena. "This isn't over. You know that, right? You think this guy scares me? You think anything scares me?" He was moving toward her again, reaching out, and Elena finally found her voice. "Don't touch me." She stepped back, the coffee pot still clutched in her hands like a weapon she didn't know how to use. "Marcus, don't—" Victor moved. One second he was standing by the office door, the next he was between Elena and Marcus, one hand catching Marcus's wrist in mid-reach. The movement was so fast, so precise, that it took Elena's brain a second to understand what she was seeing. "I said don't touch her." Victor's voice was still quiet, still calm, but there was something underneath it now, something cold and absolute. "Are you having trouble hearing me?" Marcus tried to pull his arm free. Couldn't. Tried again, putting his weight into it. Victor didn't budge, just stood there holding Marcus's wrist with the same effortless control someone might use to hold a child's hand. "Let go of me!" Rage was flooding Marcus's face now, turning it red. "You don't know who you're—" "I know exactly who I am." Victor leaned in slightly, and his voice dropped even lower. "Do you?" For the first time since Marcus had walked through the door, Elena saw uncertainty flicker across his face, saw him actually look, really look, at Victor, at the calm in those dark eyes, at the way he held Marcus's wrist without any visible effort. "Last chance," Victor said. "Walk out. Don't come back. Don't contact Elena again. Are we clear?" The seconds stretched out like hours. Elena couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't do anything but watch as Marcus's face went through a dozen different expressions: anger, confusion, calculation, and finally something that might have been fear. "Yeah." Marcus yanked his arm back, and this time Victor let him go. "Yeah, we're clear." He was backing toward the door, but his eyes were still on Elena. "This isn't over," he said again. "You hear me, Elena? This isn't—" "Yes, it is." Victor moved again, just one step, but Marcus stopped talking immediately. "If I see you here again, if I hear you've contacted Elena in any way, you'll learn very quickly that being polite is a choice I make, not a limitation I have. Do we understand each other?" Marcus stared at him for another few seconds. Then he turned and walked out, the door slamming behind him hard enough to rattle the front windows. The silence that followed was so complete Elena could hear her own ragged breathing. "Elena." Lucy's voice came from somewhere to her left, tight with worry. "Are you okay?" Was she okay? Elena looked down at her hands. The coffee pot was shaking so badly she was surprised it hadn't shattered. Her whole body was trembling, adrenaline and terror and relief all flooding through her at once. "I need—" Her voice broke. "I need to— Lucy, take over Elena's tables." Victor's hand was suddenly on her elbow, gentle but firm, steering her toward the back office. Tell Carlos to handle the kitchen alone for 20 minutes. Yes, Mr. Moretti. Elena let herself be guided through the restaurant, past the staring customers and the concerned glances from the kitchen staff. Let Victor lead her into his office and close the door behind them. Let him take the coffee pot from her hands before she dropped it. Then her legs gave out, and she was sitting in the leather chair across from his desk, her hands pressed against her face, trying very hard not to completely fall apart. Breathe, Victor's voice came from somewhere above her. Slow breaths, Elena, in through your nose, out through your mouth. She tried, dragged in air that felt too thick, too heavy. Her lungs were burning. Her hands were still shaking. That's good. Keep breathing. Gradually, slowly, the world stopped spinning. The panic receded enough for Elena to lower her hands and look up at Victor. He was standing a few feet away, giving her space, his expression unreadable. I'm sorry, she managed. I'm so sorry, Mr. Moretti. I didn't know he would. I never thought he'd find me here. Stop apologizing. He moved to his desk, opened a drawer, and pulled out a bottle of water. Here, drink this. Elena took it with trembling hands, managed to get the cap off, took a sip that turned into several long swallows. The cold water helped, grounded her, reminded her that she was here, now, safe in Victor Moretti's office, instead of in Marcus's grip. Who is he? Victor asked quietly. My ex-boyfriend. The words tasted like ash. Marcus. I left him 2 years ago, moved 3 times, changed my name. I thought I'd finally... Her voice cracked. I thought he'd given up. If Victor was watching her with those dark, unreadable eyes. He hurt you. It wasn't a question. Elena wondered what he'd seen in those few terrible minutes, wondered what her face had shown when Marcus walked in. Yes, she whispered. He hurt me. How badly? The question was blunt, direct, but Elena found herself answering anyway. Maybe because he'd already seen the worst of it. Maybe because lying suddenly felt more exhausting than the truth. Hospital, twice. She looked down at the water bottle, at her reflection distorted in the plastic. Broken ribs the first time, concussion the second. I told the doctors I fell down the stairs. And the police? I never called them. Shame burned in her chest, hot and familiar. I was scared. He said if I ever went to the police, if I ever left him, he'd kill you. Victor's voice was flat, matter of fact. Elena nodded, not trusting herself to speak. For a long moment, Victor didn't say anything. He just stood there, absolutely still, his expression carved from stone. When he finally spoke, his voice was so quiet, Elena almost didn't hear it. He won't touch you again. Something in the way he said it made Elena look up sharply. There was no comfort in those words, no reassurance, just a simple statement of fact delivered with the same certainty someone might use to say the sky is blue or water is wet. Mr. Moretti. Victor. He met her eyes. If we're going to handle this situation, you should call me Victor. Handle this situation? Fear spiked through Elena's chest again, different this time. What do you mean, handle it? I just need to... I'll move again, find another city, change my name again. I've done it before, I can... And he'll find you again. Victor moved to the window that overlooked the alley behind the restaurant. Men like him don't stop, Elena. They don't give up. They see the people they hurt as possessions, as things that belong to them. And they'll spend years hunting those possessions down. Elena's hands tightened on the water bottle. So, what am I supposed to do? I can't fight him. I can't go to the police without proof. I can't... You can accept my help. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implications Elena didn't fully understand. What kind of help? She asked carefully. Victor turned from the window to face her. The kind that keeps him from ever finding you again. The kind that makes sure when you go home at night, you're actually safe. The kind that gives you the protection you need until this threat is permanently neutralized. Neutralized. The word sent a chill down Elena's spine. I don't understand, she said slowly. You own a restaurant. How can you... I own several restaurants. Victor's expression didn't change. Among other things, and I have resources that can help you. if you'll trust me. Elena stared at him. She'd worked for this man for 6 months, had exchanged maybe 100 words with him total, and now he was offering her, what? Protection? Security? There had to be a catch. There was always a catch. Why? The question came out harder than she'd intended. Why would you help me? You don't even know me. I know enough. Victor moved back to his desk, leaned against it with his arms crossed. I know you're a hard worker. I know you're always on time, never complain, treat the customers well. I know you've been running from something since the day you started here. I could see it in the way you flinched every time a man raised his voice, the way you always positioned yourself near the exits. Heat flooded Elena's cheeks. She'd thought she'd hidden it better than that. And I know, Victor continued quietly, what it looks like when someone is being hunted. So I'll ask you again, will you trust me? Elena looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time since he'd hired her. Saw the gray at his temples and the small scar above his left eyebrow. Saw the expensive suit and the watch that probably cost more than she made in 6 months. Saw the calm, absolute certainty in his dark eyes, and saw something else too. Something that reminded her of the way he'd moved when Marcus reached for her. The effortless control, the complete lack of fear. This was not just a restaurant owner. Whatever else Victor Moretti was, whoever he really was beneath the polite exterior and the expensive suits, he was someone Marcus had been afraid of. What would accepting your help mean? Elena asked. It means you don't go home to your apartment tonight. It means I provide you with a secure location, around-the-clock protection, and whatever resources you need until this threat is handled. Around-the-clock protection. Elena heard the skepticism in her own voice. Like bodyguards? Yes. And how much would this cost me? Nothing. Elena laughed, sharp and bitter. Nobody does something for nothing, Mr. Moretti. What do you want in return? For the first time since she'd met him, Victor smiled. It was a small smile, barely a curve of his lips, but it changed his entire face, made him look almost human instead of like something carved from granite. I want, he said quietly, to make sure that the woman who makes the best espresso in my restaurant doesn't end up in the hospital again. Or worse. That's all. That's all. Elena didn't believe him, couldn't believe him. But she also couldn't deny the simple truth of her situation. She had nowhere else to go, no one else to turn to. No resources beyond the $300 she had saved in the coffee can under her bed. And Marcus knew where she lived. The thought hit her like a physical blow. If Marcus had found the restaurant, he'd found her apartment. Probably knew her schedule, knew exactly where to wait for her when her shift ended at midnight. He knows where I live, she whispered. If I go home tonight... You're not going home tonight. Victor straightened from the desk, pulling his phone from his pocket. Do you have anything at your apartment you absolutely need? Elena thought about her tiny studio in the rundown building on the east side. Thought about her few clothes, the secondhand books, the single photograph of her mother she kept on the nightstand. Some clothes, she said. A few personal items, nothing I couldn't replace. Good. Then you're coming with me. Right now? Right now. Victor was already texting someone, his fingers moving across the screen with the same precise efficiency he brought to everything. I'm sending someone to collect your things from the apartment. You'll stay in one of my properties until we've handled the situation with your ex. One of your properties? Elena stood up on shaky legs. How many properties do you have? Victor glanced up from his phone, and that small smile flickered across his face again. Enough. Are you ready to go? No. She wasn't ready. She would never be ready for this, for accepting help from a man she barely knew, for walking into a situation she didn't understand. But she also wasn't ready to face Marcus alone in a dark parking lot at midnight, wasn't ready to go back to the hospital with broken ribs and a concussion and lies about falling downstairs. So Elena Cruz, who had been running for 2 years, who had rebuilt her life 3 times in 3 different cities, who had learned to flinch at raised voices and sleep with a knife under her pillow, looked at Victor Moretti and made a choice. Yes, she said. I'm ready. Victor's car was a black Mercedes sedan that probably cost more than Elena had made in her entire life. The interior smelled like leather and expensive cologne, and the seats were heated even though it was barely cold outside. Elena sat in the passenger seat with her hands folded in her lap, watching the city slide past the tinted windows. They'd left through the back door of the restaurant. Victor had texted Lucy and Carlos to close up, had made 2 more calls Elena couldn't hear clearly, and then they'd been in the car pulling out of the alley. The whole thing had taken maybe 10 minutes. Now they were heading west, away from Elena's neighborhood, toward the part of the city where old money lived behind iron gates and security systems. "Where are we going?" Elena asked, breaking the silence. "I have an apartment building on the north side." Victor kept his eyes on the road, his hands steady on the wheel. "Top floor is currently vacant. 3 bedrooms, full security system, 24-hour doorman. You'll be safe there." 3 bedrooms. Elena's entire current apartment would probably fit inside one of those bedrooms. "And the protection you mentioned?" "I'll have someone watching the building at all times. No one gets in without clearance. If your ex shows up, we'll know immediately." "Who's we?" Elena turned to look at him. "You keep saying you have resources, but you won't tell me what that means." Victor was quiet for a moment, his jaw working like he was choosing his words carefully. "I have business interests beyond the restaurants," he said finally. "Those interests require a certain level of security infrastructure. I'm extending that infrastructure to cover you." "Business interests." Elena heard the evasion in his voice. "What kind of business?" "The kind that's better left undiscussed in polite company." The blunt honesty of it startled a laugh out of Elena, sharp and slightly hysterical. "So you're what? A criminal?" "I'm a businessman who operates in gray areas." Victor glanced at her, his expression unreadable. "Does that frighten you?" It should. It absolutely should frighten her. But Elena was already in a car with a man she barely knew, heading to an apartment she'd never seen, running from an ex-boyfriend who wanted to kill her. She'd passed the point of rational fear somewhere around the time Victor had caught Marcus's wrist and made it look effortless. "Honestly," she said, "I don't know. Everything about this situation should terrify me. But Marcus was terrified of you, and that's the first time I've seen him scared of anyone." "Good." The single word held a wealth of satisfaction. "Fear is useful. It keeps people honest." They pulled up to a high-rise building made of glass and steel, all sleek lines and expensive architecture. A doorman in a burgundy uniform immediately opened Elena's door, greeting Victor by name. Inside, the lobby was all marble floors and modern art, the kind of place Elena had only ever seen in magazines. The elevator required a key card to access the top floor. Victor produced one from his wallet and handed it to Elena. "This is yours now," he said as the elevator began its smooth ascent. "It's the only way to reach the penthouse. Don't lose it." "Penthouse." Elena turned the card over in her hands. "You're putting me in a penthouse." "I'm putting you somewhere Marcus can't reach you." The elevator opened directly into the apartment, and Elena stepped out into a space that looked like something from a design magazine. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city. White marble floors reflected the overhead lighting. Modern furniture in shades of gray and white created conversation areas that probably never got used. It was beautiful, impersonal, nothing like any place Elena had ever lived. "The master bedroom is through there," Victor pointed to a hallway. "The other 2 rooms are for whatever you need, office, guest room, whatever. Kitchen is fully stocked. The building has a gym on the 10th floor and a pool on the roof." Elena walked slowly into the living room, her shoes clicking on the marble. "I can't afford this," she said quietly. "Not in a million years." "You're not paying for it." "Mr. Moretti, Victor." "Victor." Elena turned to face him. "Why are you doing this? And don't tell me it's because I make good espresso. Nobody does this for an employee they barely know." Victor moved to the windows, looking out at the city lights. "I told you, I know what it's like to be hunted." "Personal experience?" "Yes." The single word hung in the air between them, heavy with implications. Elena watched Victor's reflection in the window glass, saw the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands were clasped behind his back. "Did someone help you?" she asked quietly. "When you were being hunted?" "No." His voice was flat. "I learned to help myself, but it took years, and it cost me things I can never get back." "You don't have years, Elena, and I'd rather you didn't pay the same price as I did." Before Elena could respond, Victor's phone buzzed. He pulled it out, read something on the screen, and his expression hardened. What is it? Elena's stomach dropped. Is it Marcus? My people just checked your apartment. Victor looked up from his phone, and there was something in his eyes that made Elena's blood run cold. He was already there, waiting for you. The floor seemed to tilt under Elena's feet. He was inside my apartment? He broke the lock on your door. Appears to have been searching through your things. Victor's voice was controlled, professional, but Elena could hear the anger underneath. They've secured the scene and are collecting your belongings now. They'll be delivered here within the hour. Elena couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The image of Marcus in her apartment, going through her clothes, her books, the few personal items she owned, it made her skin crawl. He broke into my home, she whispered. He was going to wait there for me. Yes. Victor pocketed his phone and moved toward her. Which is why you're staying here, where he can't reach you. For how long? Elena looked up at him. How long do I hide? How long do I let him control my life? As long as it takes. As long as it takes for what? Frustration and fear were mixing into something that felt like anger. For him to give up? For him to get arrested? What's the end game here, Victor? Victor studied her for a long moment, his dark eyes searching her face. The end game, he said quietly, is making sure Marcus understands that you're under my protection, and that violating that protection would be the last mistake he ever makes. The words should have shocked her, should have frightened her, but all Elena felt was a strange, fierce satisfaction. Good, she heard herself say, because I'm tired of running. Victor's expression shifted, something that might have been approval flickering across his face. Then we understand each other. A knock at the door interrupted them. Victor moved to answer it, exchanging quiet words with whoever was in the hallway. When he stepped back, two men in dark suits entered carrying boxes, Elena's belongings from the apartment she'd never see again. Put them in the master bedroom, Victor instructed, and post someone in the lobby. No one comes up here without my authorization. Yes, sir. The men moved efficiently through the apartment, depositing the boxes and disappearing back into the elevator. Elena stared at the closed elevator doors. They called you sir. Yes. Those weren't building security, were they? No. Who were they? Victor turned to face her fully, and for the first time since she'd met him, Elena saw the complete truth in his eyes. No evasion, no carefully chosen words, just brutal, absolute honesty. They work for me, he said, as do 30 other men and women who handle various aspects of my business interests. Some of those interests are legitimate. Some exist in gray areas, and some would be considered highly illegal by law enforcement, but all of them require loyalty, discretion, and the ability to handle problems quickly and permanently. He paused, giving her time to process that. I'm telling you this because you're under my protection now, and you deserve to know exactly what that means. It means you have the resources of my entire organization behind you. It means when I say Marcus won't touch you again, I have the means to ensure that. And it means you're now connected to things that most people would rather not be connected to. Elena's heart was pounding, but she forced herself to hold his gaze. Are you giving me a chance to walk away? Yes. Right now, before this goes any further, you can walk away. I'll still have someone watch your back, but you won't be part of this world. You won't be in my debt. You can go back to running if that's what you choose. And if I stay? If you stay, you accept my protection completely. You trust me to handle Marcus. And you understand that the solution might not be conventional. Conventional. Such a careful word for what he was really saying. Elena wasn't stupid. She understood what permanent solutions meant in the context of organized crime, had seen enough movies, read enough news stories. She should walk away, should thank Victor for his help and disappear again. Find another city, another restaurant, another name. Keep running until Marcus finally gave up or she died trying to stay ahead of him. But she was so tired. Tired of being afraid. Tired of sleeping with a knife. Tired of flinching at shadows and changing her hair and lying about who she was. And Victor Moretti, whatever else he was, had stood between her and Marcus without hesitation, had looked at her broken life and offered to protect it, was giving her a choice that no one else had ever given her. I'm staying, Elena said firmly, "and I trust you to handle Marcus however you see fit. Just," she paused, choosing her words carefully, "just tell me when it's over, when I'm safe. That's all I need to know." Victor nodded slowly, and something that might have been respect flickered across his face. "You'll know," he said. "I promise you that. When it's done, when you're truly safe, I'll tell you." "Okay." Elena took a shaky breath, feeling the weight of the decision settle over her shoulders. "Okay. Get some rest." Victor moved toward the elevator. "I'll have food delivered in an hour. Tomorrow we'll discuss next steps." "You're leaving?" Elena hadn't expected that, hadn't expected to suddenly be alone in this vast, empty apartment. "You need space to process everything that's happened tonight, and I have phone calls to make." Victor pressed the elevator button, and the doors slid open. "But if you need anything, anything at all, there's a phone on the kitchen counter. Press one. It goes directly to me." 24 hours a day? 24 hours a day. He stepped into the elevator and turned to face her. "You're safe here, Elena. I give you my word." Then the doors closed, and Elena was alone. She stood in the middle of the enormous living room for a long moment, trying to wrap her mind around everything that had happened in the past hour. This morning she'd been a waitress hiding from her past. Now she was standing in a penthouse under the protection of a man who openly admitted to running a criminal organization. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, the cheap prepaid cell she'd bought when she'd first run from Marcus. Elena pulled it out and saw a text from an unknown number. "I found you once. I'll find you again. No one keeps what's mine. Marcus." Elena's hands started shaking again, and she had to sit down on the white leather couch before her legs gave out. He'd gotten her number, was already threatening her. The phone on the kitchen counter rang. Elena walked over on unsteady legs and picked it up. "Hello?" "Did you just receive a text message?" Victor's voice was calm, but she could hear the steel underneath. "How did you—" "I'm monitoring your phone. What did it say?" Elena read him the message, her voice surprisingly steady. "Good." Victor sounded satisfied rather than concerned. "He's making mistakes already. Threatening you via text gives us evidence, and more importantly, it tells me he's scared." "Scared people are dangerous." "Yes, which is why I'm handling this quickly. Elena, I need you to do something for me." "What?" "I need you to respond to that text. Tell him you're not alone anymore. Tell him if he contacts you again, there will be consequences. But trust me." Victor's voice was gentle but firm. "Marcus is used to you being afraid, used to you running. We're going to show him that's changed. Are you willing to do that?" Elena looked at the threatening text on her phone, thought about 2 years of running, 2 years of fear, 2 years of letting Marcus control her life even from a distance. "Yes," she said. "Tell me exactly what to say." Victor dictated the message, and Elena typed it carefully. "I'm not alone anymore. If you contact me again, the people protecting me will make sure you regret it. This is your only warning." Her finger hovered over the send button. "Victor?" "Yes?" "What happens if this makes him angrier? What if he does something worse?" "Then he'll discover very quickly that anger without power is just noise. Send the message, Elena." She pressed send. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the 3 dots appeared, showing Marcus was typing. Elena's heart hammered in her chest as she watched those dots pulse. The response came through. "We'll see." "He said we'll see," Elena reported to Victor. "Good. Now block his number and get some rest. The food will arrive in 30 minutes. Make sure you eat something." "Victor?" "Yes?" "Thank you. For everything." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "You're welcome." "And Elena? You made the right choice tonight. Get some sleep. Tomorrow we start making sure you never have to run again." The line went dead. Elena set down the phone and walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the city lights spread below her. Somewhere out there, Marcus was angry, plotting, planning his next move. But for the first time in 2 years, Elena wasn't alone, wasn't running, wasn't hiding. She was under the protection of a man who had looked Marcus in the eye and made him back down. A man who commanded loyalty from people willing to break into apartments and deliver boxes and stand guard in lobbies. a man who existed in the gray areas between legitimate business and organized crime. A man who, for reasons Elena didn't fully understand, had decided she was worth protecting. She touched her fingers to the cold glass and made herself a promise. Whatever happened next, whoever Victor Moretti really was, she would not waste this chance, would not let fear control her anymore. Marcus had found her behind a counter, holding a coffee pot and praying it wouldn't shatter, but Elena Cruz was done breaking. The food arrived exactly 30 minutes later. Thai takeout from a restaurant Elena recognized as one of the best in the city. She ate pad thai at the marble kitchen counter, still wearing her waitress uniform, in an apartment that cost more per month than she'd made in a year. And for the first time in 2 years, she fell asleep without a knife under her pillow, because Victor Moretti had promised she was safe. And somehow, impossibly, Elena believed him. Elena woke to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows she didn't recognize. For one disoriented moment, she forgot where she was, forgot the penthouse and Victor Moretti and Marcus breaking into her apartment. Then memory crashed back and she sat up in the enormous bed, her heart racing. The clock on the nightstand read 9:15. She'd slept for almost 9 hours straight, longer than she'd slept in months. No nightmares, no jerking awake at every sound, just deep, dreamless sleep in a bed that probably cost more than her car. Her boxes sat stacked in the corner of the master bedroom, everything she owned in 4 cardboard containers. Elena got up and started unpacking, trying to ignore how pathetic her belongings looked in this space. 3 pairs of jeans, a handful of shirts, the photo of her mother, a jewelry box containing exactly 2 items, her mother's wedding ring and a cheap silver bracelet she'd bought herself in the last city. She was hanging up her second shirt when the phone in the kitchen rang. Elena padded out barefoot, still wearing the t-shirt and sweatpants she'd slept in. "Hello? Good morning." Victor's voice was crisp, alert, like he'd been awake for hours. "How did you sleep?" "Better than I have in 2 years," Elena admitted. "What time did you wake up?" "I don't sleep much. There's coffee in the kitchen, espresso machine on the counter. Can you handle it or should I send someone up?" Despite everything, Elena smiled. "I think I can manage an espresso machine." "Good. I'll be there in 20 minutes. We need to discuss the situation." The line went dead before Elena could respond. She made herself a cappuccino. The machine was a top-of-the-line Italian model that probably cost $5,000 and was sitting at the kitchen counter when the elevator doors opened exactly 20 minutes later. Victor stepped out carrying a leather briefcase and 2 paper bags that smelled like fresh pastries. He'd changed since last night, now wearing charcoal slacks and a black dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up to his forearms. Elena noticed a tattoo on his left forearm, some kind of symbol she couldn't quite make out. "Breakfast," he said, setting the bags on the counter. "I wasn't sure what you liked, so I brought options." Elena opened the bags to find croissants, danishes, bagels, and what looked like homemade muffins. "This is enough food for 6 people. Then you'll have leftovers." Victor poured himself an espresso from the machine, moving around the kitchen with the ease of someone familiar with the space. "We need to talk about Marcus." Elena's appetite disappeared. "What happened?" "He tried to find you last night." Victor pulled a tablet from his briefcase and set it on the counter. "Security footage from your old apartment building. Watch." Elena looked at the screen and saw grainy black and white footage of the hallway outside her old apartment. The timestamp read 1:47 a.m. As she watched, Marcus appeared in frame, walking straight to her door. He knocked, waited, knocked again, harder this time. Then he started kicking the door. Elena flinched at each impact, even though she was watching it on a screen hours later. After the 5th kick, Marcus stepped back and looked directly at the camera. His face was twisted with rage. "He knew he was being recorded," Elena whispered. "He doesn't care." Victor tapped the screen, pausing the footage. "That's what makes him dangerous. He's past the point of rational thought. This is pure obsession." "What did he do after that?" Victor swiped to the next clip. This showed Marcus in his car, parked across from the apartment building, just sitting there, watching. The timestamp showed he stayed for 3 hours before finally driving away at 5 a.m. "He's escalating," Victor said quietly. "The text message, breaking into your apartment, now this. He's not thinking about consequences anymore. He just wants to find you. Elena wrapped her hands around her coffee cup, needing the warmth. So what do? We make sure he understands that finding you is impossible, and that trying will cost him everything. Victor closed the tablet. I've had my people looking into Marcus. Want to hear what they found? Yes. Victor pulled a folder from his briefcase and opened it. Marcus Chen, 32 years old, construction worker currently unemployed. 2 DUIs, 1 assault charge that was dropped when the victim refused to testify. 3 restraining orders filed against him by different women over the past 7 years. None of them stuck because the women withdrew their complaints. Each word was like a knife in Elena's chest. She'd known Marcus was dangerous, but hearing it laid out so clinically made it worse somehow. Made her feel stupid for ever getting involved with him in the first place. Don't, Victor said sharply. Elena looked up. Don't what? Don't blame yourself. I can see it in your face. He closed the folder. Men like Marcus are experts at hiding what they are. They're charming until they have you isolated. Then they show their true nature. It's not your fault you didn't see it coming. How do you know so much about men like him? Victor's expression went carefully neutral. Because I've dealt with them before. And because I understand how predators think. There was something in his voice that made Elena study him more carefully. Personal experience? My father was like Marcus. The words came out flat, emotionless. Charming in public, violent at home. He put my mother in the hospital 4 times before I was old enough to stop him. How old were you? 16. Victor picked up his espresso, drained it. Old enough to make sure he never touched her again. Elena wanted to ask what that meant, how exactly Victor had stopped his father at 16, but the closed look on his face told her the subject wasn't open for discussion. So what's the plan? She asked instead. The plan is to make Marcus understand that you're untouchable. I've already started. Victor pulled out his phone and showed her a photo. It was Marcus, sitting in what looked like a coffee shop, completely unaware his picture was being taken. This was taken this morning at 7 a.m. He goes to the same coffee shop every morning, gets the same drink, sits in the same spot. You're having him followed. I'm gathering information. There's a difference. Victor swiped to another photo, Marcus's car in a parking lot. He works odd jobs now, cash under the table, lives in a studio apartment in the warehouse district, has about $3,000 in his bank account and credit card debt, up to his eyeballs. Why does that matter? Because it gives us leverage. Victor set down the phone. Marcus is barely getting by. 1 financial hit, 1 unexpected expense, and he's homeless. That's a vulnerability we can exploit if necessary. Elena stared at him. You'd make him homeless? If that's what it takes to make him leave you alone, yes. Victor met her eyes steadily. I told you last night that my methods might not be conventional. I meant it. I'm willing to do whatever is necessary to ensure your safety. The question is whether you're comfortable with that. Was she? Elena turned the question over in her mind, examining it from every angle. A week ago, she would have said no, would have insisted there had to be another way, a legal way, a moral way to handle Marcus. But that was before he'd broken into her apartment, before he'd waited outside her building for 3 hours, before she'd seen the rage in his face on that security footage. I'm comfortable with it, she said finally. As long as he ends up alive and in a position where he can't hurt anyone else. Fair enough? Victor closed his briefcase. Then here's what happens next. You stay here, stay safe. I handle Marcus, and in the meantime, you start building a life that doesn't involve running. A life? Elena laughed, but there was no humor in it. I don't even have a job anymore. I can't go back to the restaurant while Marcus is looking for me. You're still employed. You're just on paid leave until this situation is resolved. Victor stood up, smoothing down his shirt. And before you argue about accepting money, remember that you make excellent espresso and I'm going to need you back eventually. Consider it an investment in my business. Elena wanted to argue, but the truth was she had exactly $300 to her name. Pride was a luxury she couldn't afford. Okay, she said quietly. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. We're just getting started. Victor moved toward the elevator, then paused. Elena, one more thing. You'll notice there's a man in the lobby named James. Tall, bald, Looks like he could bench press a car. He's your personal security. If you need to leave the building for any reason, he goes with you. Non-negotiable. I'm basically under house arrest. You're under protection. There's a difference. The elevator doors opened. I'll check in tonight. If you need anything before then, press 1. I remember. Elena watched him step into the elevator. Victor, why are you really doing this? He looked at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Because no one helped my mother until it was almost too late. And because I have the power to help you, which means I have the responsibility to do it. Is that reason enough? Yes, Elena said softly. That's reason enough. The elevator doors closed, and once again, Elena was alone. She spent the morning exploring the penthouse, opening closets and cabinets, trying to feel at home in a space that felt more like a luxury hotel than a residence. The second bedroom was set up as an office with a desk and computer. The third was completely empty except for a yoga mat in the corner. The view from every window was spectacular. The city spread out below like a map, all glass towers and tree-lined streets, and the river cutting through the center like a silver ribbon. Elena stood at the living room windows and wondered what Marcus was doing right now. If he was still searching for her, if he'd received Victor's message yet. Her old phone buzzed, the prepaid cells she'd used to text Marcus last night. Elena had forgotten to block his number like Victor had instructed. Now there was a new message waiting. You think some rich guy is going to protect you? I know men like him. They get bored, they move on, and when he does, I'll be waiting. I'm patient, Elena. I can wait as long as it takes. Elena's hands clenched around the phone. She should block him now, should delete the message and pretend she'd never seen it. Instead, she found herself texting back. You don't know anything about him, and you definitely don't know me anymore. I'm not the woman you used to control. I'm done being afraid of you. She hit send before she could second-guess herself, then immediately called Victor. He picked up on the first ring. What's wrong? I texted Marcus again. I know you said to block him, but he sent another message and I couldn't just ignore it. What did you say to him? Victor's voice was calm, curious rather than angry. Elena read both messages aloud, feeling her cheeks heat with embarrassment. I shouldn't have engaged with him, I know that, but I'm so tired of him thinking he still has power over me. What you did, Victor said slowly, was exactly right. What? Marcus is used to you being afraid, used to you running. By standing up to him, by showing him you're not intimidated anymore, you're destabilizing him, making him angry. And angry people make mistakes. There was satisfaction in Victor's voice. Send me screenshots of both messages. I want my people to see them. Your people. Elena walked to the windows, looking out at the city. Who exactly are your people, Victor? Do you really want to know? The question hung in the air between them. Elena thought about the men in dark suits who'd brought her boxes last night, about the security footage of Marcus, about the way Victor had said he'd handle the situation permanently. No, she said finally. I don't think I do. As long as you're not asking me to do anything illegal, I don't need the details. Fair enough. Now block Marcus's number and try to relax. I'll see you tonight. He hung up before Elena could respond. She blocked Marcus's number, then downloaded a meditation app and spent 20 minutes trying to calm her racing heart. It didn't work. She was too wired, too aware that somewhere out there, Marcus was searching for her. The intercom by the elevator buzzed, making Elena jump. She pressed the button. Hello? Ms. Cruz, this is James from the lobby. The voice was deep, professional. There's a delivery here for you. May I bring it up? A delivery? I didn't order anything. It's from Mr. Moretti, ma'am. Elena pressed the button to unlock the elevator. 2 minutes later, James emerged carrying 3 large shopping bags. He was exactly as Victor had described, tall, bald, built like a professional bodyguard. He had kind eyes, though, Elena noticed, the kind of eyes that softened when he smiled. Mr. Moretti asked me to tell you these are essentials, James said, setting the bags on the kitchen counter, and that you should call him if anything is missing. Elena opened the first bag and found clothes. Nice clothes, designer jeans, soft sweaters, comfortable shoes, all in her size. The second bag held toiletries, makeup, a hairdryer. The third contained books, a laptop, and a tablet. How did he know my size? Elena asked, holding up a sweater that looked like it would fit perfectly. James smiled. Mr. Moretti is very observant. Will there be anything else, ma'am? No, thank you, James, Elena paused. And you can call me Elena. Yes, ma'am. He headed back to the elevator, then turned. Miss Elena, Mr. Moretti is a good man. I've worked for him for 8 years, and I've never seen him help someone without following through completely. You're in good hands. Then he was gone, and Elena was staring at 3 bags full of things she desperately needed but couldn't afford. Things Victor had somehow known she would need. She called him immediately. I can't accept all this, she said when he answered. The clothes alone must have cost. You needed clothes, you needed a computer. Consider it handled. Victor sounded distracted, like he was doing 3 things at once. Elena, I have to go. There's a situation developing. What kind of situation? The kind that requires my immediate attention. Stay in the apartment. Don't open the door for anyone except James. I'll explain tonight. The line went dead. Elena stood in the kitchen holding her new phone, which had appeared in one of the shopping bags, and feeling the first flutter of real worry. What kind of situation? Something to do with Marcus? Something worse? She spent the afternoon reading on the tablet Victor had sent, trying to distract herself. But every time her phone buzzed with a news alert or email notification, her heart jumped. By 5 p.m., she was pacing the apartment like a caged animal. At 6, the elevator doors opened, and Victor stepped out looking like he'd been in a fight. His shirt was untucked, his knuckles were bruised, and there was a cut above his left eyebrow. Elena was across the room in seconds. What happened? Are you okay? I'm fine. Victor moved past her to the kitchen, poured himself 3 fingers of whiskey from a bottle in the cabinet. Marcus made a mistake today. What kind of mistake? Victor drained half the whiskey in one swallow. He went to your old apartment building and threatened the landlord, demanded to know where you'd gone. When the landlord refused to answer, Marcus put his fist through a wall. Is the landlord okay? Shaken, but unharmed. Marcus left before the police arrived. Victor finished the whiskey, poured more. But he made the mistake of doing it while my people were watching. We have video of the entire encounter. Elena's breath caught. Video of him making threats? Video of him committing assault and destruction of property. Combined with his text messages and the previous restraining orders, it's enough to have him arrested. Victor set down the glass and looked at her. The question is whether you want to press charges. Will he go to jail? Maybe. Probably probation and a restraining order at minimum. But here's the problem. Restraining orders are just pieces of paper. They don't actually stop determined men. And based on Marcus's behavior, I'd say he's very determined. Elena sank onto one of the kitchen stools. So we can have him arrested, but it might not actually keep him away from me. Correct. Victor leaned against the counter, and Elena could see the exhaustion in the lines around his eyes. Which is why I'm giving you a choice. We can go the legal route, file charges, get a restraining order, hope it's enough. Or we can handle this my way. Your way. Elena's mouth went dry. What does that mean? It means I have a conversation with Marcus. A very clear, very final conversation about the consequences of continuing to pursue you. It means I use resources and methods that exist outside the legal system. And it means Marcus disappears from your life permanently. Permanently? Elena heard the weight in that word. You mean? I mean he leaves the city, changes his life, forgets you exist. Victor held her gaze. I'm not talking about killing him, Elena. I'm talking about making him understand that the cost of pursuing you is higher than he's willing to pay. How would you do that? By being very persuasive about the consequences. A ghost of a smile crossed Victor's face. I can be very persuasive when necessary. Elena looked at his bruised knuckles, at the cut above his eyebrow. Is that what happened tonight? You were being persuasive? Tonight was a different matter. A business associate who thought he could renegotiate our terms. He learned otherwise. Victor rolled his shoulders, wincing slightly. But it reminded me that I'm very good at making people understand their position in the world. Marcus needs that kind of clarity. And if I say yes to this, to your way, what happens to me? You stay here until it's handled. Then you decide what you want to do next. Go back to the restaurant. Find a new job. Leave the city entirely. Whatever you choose, you'll be free to make that choice without Marcus in the picture. Elena stood up and walked to the windows, looking out at the city lights beginning to glow as dusk fell. Somewhere down there, Marcus was plotting, planning, threatening landlords and breaking through walls and sending texts full of promises about patience and waiting. And here, 40 floors up, she had a choice. Trust the legal system that had failed to protect 3 other women from Marcus, or trust Victor Moretti, a man who operated in gray areas and had people who called him sir and knew how to be persuasive about consequences. Do it, Elena said without turning around. Handle it your way. She heard Victor move behind her, felt him stop a few feet away. You're sure? I'm sure. Elena turned to face him. I've been running for 2 years, Victor. I've changed my name 3 times. I've slept with a knife under my pillow and flinched every time a door slammed. I'm done. Whatever you need to do to make Marcus leave me alone, do it. Victor studied her face for a long moment, and Elena saw something shift in his expression. Respect, maybe. Or recognition of someone who'd reached their breaking point and decided to fight back. All right, he said quietly. I'll handle it. But Elena, once I do this, there's no going back. You'll be connected to me and my world in a way that's difficult to undo. Are you prepared for that? What does that mean, connected to you? It means people who know me will know you're under my protection. It means my enemies might see you as a way to get to me. It means your life will never be quite as simple as it was before. Victor's voice was gentle but firm. I need you to understand what you're accepting. Elena thought about her simple life, her rundown apartments and waitressing jobs and constant fear. Thought about looking over her shoulder every day, wondering when Marcus would find her again. My life hasn't been simple since the day I met Marcus, she said. At least this way, I'll have someone watching my back. Victor nodded slowly. Then it's done. I'll take care of Marcus. You focus on figuring out what comes next. When will you... Elena paused. When will you talk to him? Tomorrow night. I have something planned that should be very educational for Marcus. The dangerous edge was back in Victor's voice. By this time tomorrow, he'll understand that you're not available. Not now. Not ever. And if he doesn't listen, then I'll make the message clearer. One way or another, Elena, Marcus is finished threatening you. I promise you that. Elena believed him. Maybe she was foolish to trust a man she'd known for less than 48 hours, a man who openly admitted to running criminal enterprises. But Victor had stood between her and Marcus without hesitation, had offered protection without asking for anything in return, had seen her at her most vulnerable and responded with nothing but respect and support. Thank you, she said softly, for everything. Victor's expression softened slightly. Don't thank me yet. We still have work to do. He glanced at his watch. Have you eaten? No? Neither have I. There's an Italian place downstairs that delivers. Best carbonara in the city. He pulled out his phone. What do you like? They ate dinner at the kitchen counter, talking about everything except Marcus and protection and dangerous men. Victor told her about growing up in the city, about taking over his father's business and turning it into something larger. Elena told him about her mother, about the small town she'd grown up in, about her dreams of becoming a teacher before life had gotten complicated. It was the most normal conversation Elena had had in years, and she found herself actually laughing at Victor's dry observations about restaurant customers, found herself relaxing in a way she hadn't thought possible. When he finally left at 10 p.m., Elena stood at the windows and watched the city lights blur together. Tomorrow, Victor would confront Marcus. Tomorrow, everything would change. But tonight, for the first time in 2 years, Elena Cruz felt something other than fear. She felt hope. The next day crawled by with agonizing slowness. Elena woke early, made coffee, tried to read, gave up after 10 minutes of staring at the same paragraph. She did yoga on the mat in the 3rd bedroom, took a long shower, reorganized her clothes in the closet. Anything to keep her mind off what Victor was planning to do tonight. By noon, she was pacing the apartment like a trapped animal. James had called up from the lobby to check on her twice. The second time, his voice had been carefully neutral when he asked if she needed anything. I'm fine, Elena had lied. Just restless. Mr. Moretti mentioned you might want to get out of the apartment. There's a private gym on the 10th floor. I could escort you down if you'd like. Elena had almost said yes, but the thought of leaving the penthouse made her chest tight with anxiety. Maybe tomorrow, she'd said instead. Now it was 3 in the afternoon, and her phone, the new one Victor had given her, sat silent on the kitchen counter. No calls, no texts, no updates about what was happening with Marcus. The old Elena would have called Victor, demanded to know what was going on, needed constant reassurance. But the woman she was becoming, the woman who'd stood in this apartment last night and told Victor to handle Marcus however he saw fit, that woman could wait. So Elena made herself lunch from the well-stocked refrigerator, ate without tasting anything, and tried not to watch the clock. At 4 p.m., her phone finally rang. Victor's name appeared on the screen. Hello? Elena answered immediately, hating how breathless she sounded. How are you holding up? Victor's voice was calm, giving nothing away. I'm fine. What's happening? Nothing yet. I'm calling because I need you to do something for me tonight. He paused. I need you to trust me completely, even when you don't understand what's happening. Can you do that? Elena's heart started racing. What are you planning? I'm going to have a conversation with Marcus, but the conversation will be more effective if he believes he's found you on his own. Victor's voice was measured, careful. I need you to leave the building tonight. Go somewhere public, somewhere you'd normally go. James will be with you the entire time, but Marcus can't know that. You want to use me as bait. The words came out flat, emotionless, even though Elena's hands were shaking. I want to create a controlled situation where Marcus reveals his intentions in a way that can't be denied, where he makes the final mistake that justifies everything I'm about to do. Victor's voice softened. Elena, I would never put you in real danger. James will be within 10 feet of you at all times. So will 3 other members of my security team. Marcus won't get within arm's reach of you, but he needs to think he has a chance. Elena walked to the windows, pressed her forehead against the cool glass. And when he approaches me, what happens then? Then I step in, and Marcus learns exactly what it means to threaten someone under my protection. There was steel underneath Victor's calm tone. But only if you're willing. If you'd rather stay in the apartment, I'll find another way. This just happens to be the most efficient option. Efficient, Elena laughed, sharp and bitter. You make it sound like a business transaction. In many ways it is. Marcus is a problem. We're solving it. The method just requires your participation. Victor paused. But I won't force you into anything, Elena. The choice is yours. Elena closed her eyes, thinking about 2 years of running, 2 years of hiding, 2 years of letting Marcus control her life from a distance. She'd told Victor she was done being afraid, and she'd meant it. But standing here now, contemplating walking out into the open where Marcus could find her, that took a different kind of courage. What time? She asked quietly. 7 p.m. There's a bookstore on 5th Avenue, Morrison's. It stays open until 9, usually has a decent crowd. Go there, browse for about 30 minutes. Marcus has been watching your social media, the few accounts you kept active. He knows you love bookstores. Of course he did. Marcus had memorized everything about her during their relationship, filed it all away to use against her later. The fact that he was still tracking her habits after 2 years made her skin crawl. Okay, Elena said. I'll do it. James will brief you on the details. And Elena? Victor's voice dropped lower. This ends tonight. One way or another, after tonight, you're free. Do you believe me? Yes, Elena whispered. I believe you. She hung up and stood at the windows for a long time, watching the city move below her. People walking dogs, hailing cabs, living their normal lives without fear or violence or men who wanted to own them. Soon, she told herself, soon she'd be one of them again. At 6:30, Elena dressed carefully in dark jeans and a black sweater, pulling her hair back into a ponytail. She looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. 2 days ago, she'd been a waitress terrified of her own shadow. Now she was preparing to walk into danger with her eyes wide open. The elevator doors opened and James stepped out carrying a small earpiece. Mr. Moretti asked me to give you this. It's completely concealed once it's in place. I'll be able to communicate with you, and you'll be able to hear me at all times. Elena let him fit the device in her ear, marveling at how invisible it was. Can Victor hear me too? Mr. Moretti will be monitoring the entire situation. James stepped back, his expression serious. Miss Elena, I need you to understand something. I've been doing this kind of work for 15 years. I've protected diplomats, celebrities, people with real enemies, and I've never, not once, lost someone I was protecting. You're not going to be the first. The conviction in his voice steadied something in Elena's chest. Thank you, James. Just follow my lead, stay calm, and remember that you're never alone out there. We've got you covered from every angle. He moved toward the elevator. Ready? Elena grabbed her purse, new, expensive, bought by Victor, and followed him into the elevator. As ready as I'll ever be. The ride down to the lobby felt like it took hours. Elena's heart was hammering so hard she was sure James could hear it. When the doors opened, she stepped out into the marble-floored lobby and felt exposed in a way she hadn't felt since the night Marcus found her at the restaurant. A black SUV waited at the curb. James opened the back door for her, and Elena slid inside to find two other men already in the front seats. Both wore dark suits and had the same watchful, alert expressions as James. Ms. Cruz, this is Marco and David. They'll be positioning themselves around the bookstore before we arrive. James climbed in beside her. Everyone clear on the protocol? Crystal, Marco said from the driver's seat. He had a slight accent, Italian, Elena thought. Target is currently at a bar 6 blocks from the bookstore. Our people are tracking him. Target. They were talking about Marcus like he was some kind of mission objective. Elena supposed that's exactly what he was. The drive to Fifth Avenue took 12 minutes. Elena spent the entire time trying to breathe normally while James explained the plan in a low, calm voice. She would enter the bookstore through the main entrance. Marco and David would already be inside, positioned to look like regular customers. James would stay outside, watching the street. 2 more security team members, women named Sarah and Lynn, would be in the coffee shop next door. If Marcus approaches you, stay calm and keep him talking, James instructed. Don't let him touch you, but don't run either. Mr. Moretti will handle the rest. Where will Victor be? Elena asked. Close. James's expression gave nothing away. Trust me, Ms. Elena, Mr. Moretti has done this before. He knows exactly what he's doing. The SUV pulled up to the curb outside Morrison's bookstore, a 3-story building with warm lighting and displays of bestsellers in the windows. Through the glass, Elena could see people browsing the shelves, a woman at the register ringing up purchases, the coffee bar in the back corner. Normal people doing normal things, completely unaware that a trap was being set in their midst. Remember, James said as he opened her door, we're with you every step of the way. You're not alone. Elena stepped out onto the sidewalk and felt the November wind cut through her sweater. She pulled it tighter and walked toward the bookstore entrance, forcing herself to move naturally, casually, like she had every right to be there. The bell above the door chimed as she entered. Warm air and the smell of coffee and paper enveloped her. Elena had always loved bookstores, had spent countless hours in them during her childhood, getting lost in stories about people whose lives were more interesting than her own. Now she was living in one of those stories, and it was terrifying. She moved toward the fiction section, running her fingers along the spines of books without really seeing them. Her earpiece crackled softly. Target is on the move. Marco's voice was quiet but clear. Left the bar 3 minutes ago, heading in your direction. Elena's breath caught. Marcus was coming. This was really happening. Stay calm, James's voice came through. You're doing great. Just keep browsing. Elena pulled a book off the shelf at random, something with a blue cover and a title she didn't register. Opened it, pretended to read. Her hands were shaking so badly the pages blurred. Target is 2 blocks away, Marco reported. Moving fast. 1 block away, half a block. He just spotted you through the window, James said. Here we go. Remember, stay calm. Keep him talking. Don't let him touch you. Elena's whole body went rigid. She forced herself to turn a page, to keep her eyes on the book, even though she couldn't see the words anymore. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to hide, to get as far away as possible. The bell above the door chimed. Elena didn't look up. Didn't need to. She could feel Marcus's presence like a physical weight in the room, could sense his eyes on her back. The other customers kept browsing, oblivious. The woman at the register kept scanning books. The world kept turning while Elena's heart threatened to explode out of her chest. Elena. Marcus's voice came from behind her, rough with emotion. I knew you'd come back to your old habits eventually. You always did love bookstores. Elena turned slowly, keeping the book in her hands like a shield. Marcus stood 10 feet away, and he looked worse than he had at the restaurant. His eyes were bloodshot, his jaw unshaven, his clothes rumpled like he'd been wearing them for days. But the rage in his expression was sharp and focused. Marcus, her voice came out steadier than she'd expected. You need to leave. Leave? He laughed, harsh and bitter. I've been looking for you for 2 years, baby. I'm not leaving now that I've finally found you. I'm not your baby. I'm not anything to you anymore. Elena took a step back, maintaining the distance between them. You need to move on, Marcus. Find someone else. Forget about me. Forget about you? Marcus's voice rose and several other customers glanced over. You're mine, Elena. You've always been mine. Some rich guy can't change that. He's not just some rich guy. The words came out before Elena could stop them. And I was never yours. I was your victim. There's a difference. Marcus's face went dark red. Victim? I loved you. I gave you everything, and you ran away like a coward. You put me in the hospital twice. Elena's voice was getting stronger now, fed by 2 years of suppressed anger. You broke my ribs, gave me a concussion, terrorized me for 3 years. That's not love, Marcus. That's abuse. I was trying to help you. Marcus took a step forward. You needed discipline, structure. I was making you better. No. Elena held her ground, even though every nerve in her body was screaming to run. You were destroying me, but I'm done letting you. I'm done being afraid. You should be afraid. Marcus's voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried across the space between them. Because I'm not giving up. I don't care who's protecting you. I don't care how much money he has. You belong to me, and I'm taking you back. He lunged forward, reaching for her arm. Elena jerked back, the book falling from her hands. But before Marcus could close the distance, James appeared out of nowhere, stepping smoothly between them. His hand caught Marcus's wrist, just like Victor had done at the restaurant, stopping his forward momentum cold. I don't think so, James said calmly. Marcus tried to pull free. Couldn't. Confusion flooded his face. Who the hell are you? Someone who's much better at this than you are. James's grip didn't waver. Now, I'm going to give you one chance to walk away. After that, things get significantly worse for you. Let go of me. Marcus was pulling harder now, putting his weight into it. James stood perfectly still, holding him without visible effort. Let go or I'll... You'll what? The new voice came from the bookstore entrance. Elena's eyes snapped to the door, and there was Victor. He'd changed since this morning, now wearing all black. Black suit, black shirt, black tie. He looked like death personified, and the expression on his face made Elena's blood run cold. If this was what Victor looked like when he was being persuasive about consequences, she never wanted to be on the receiving end of that persuasion. Marcus turned, and Elena saw the exact moment he recognized Victor from the restaurant, saw fear flicker across his face before rage pushed it aside. You, Marcus spat. This is your fault. You turned her against me. No. Victor walked toward them with that same economical grace Elena had noticed before, every movement precise and controlled. You did that yourself 2 years ago when you put her in the hospital. I'm just making sure it doesn't happen again. She's mine, Marcus said again, like it was the only truth he knew. She's not a possession. Victor stopped a few feet away. She's a person who's been living in fear because of you. That ends now. You can't stop me. Marcus was breathing hard, still struggling against James's hold. I'll keep looking. I'll keep finding her. You can't watch her every second of every day. Actually, I can. Victor's voice was soft, almost gentle. I have resources you can't imagine, Marcus. People who are very good at making problems disappear, and right now, you're a problem. Something in his tone made Marcus go very still. Are you threatening me? I'm explaining your situation. Victor took another step closer. You have two choices. The first is you leave this city tonight. You change your phone number. You delete every social media account. You never contact Elena again in any way. You forget she exists. And if I don't? Then I make the choice for you. Victor's expression didn't change, but his voice dropped into a register that made Elena's spine tingle. And trust me when I say you won't enjoy how I solve problems that refuse to solve themselves. You're bluffing. But Marcus's voice wavered. You're not above the law. Neither are you. Would you like to discuss the video footage we have of you threatening Elena's landlord? The texts you sent her? The restraining orders from 3 other women? Victor pulled his phone from his pocket, tapped the screen, held it up. Elena couldn't see what was on the display, but she saw Marcus's face go white. That's impossible, Marcus whispered. How did you... I told you, I have resources. Victor pocketed the phone. So let me be very clear about your options. Option 1, you disappear. I'll even help you relocate. Give you enough money to start over somewhere else. Clean slate. All you have to do is leave Elena alone. And option 2? Victor smiled, and it was the most terrifying expression Elena had ever seen. Option 2 is I turn all of this evidence over to the police. You get arrested for stalking, harassment, assault. You go to trial. And while you're waiting for that trial, sitting in jail because you can't make bail, my associates ensure you understand very personally what happens to men who hurt women. The bookstore had gone completely silent. Every customer, every employee was watching the confrontation unfold. Elena realized that Victor had planned this too, had wanted witnesses, had orchestrated this entire scene to be as public and undeniable as possible. You can't do this, Marcus said, but there was no conviction in his voice anymore. Only fear. I already am. Victor nodded to James, who released Marcus's wrist. You have 24 hours to leave the city. If you're still here after that, I'll assume you've chosen option 2. And Marcus? Victor leaned in close enough that only Marcus could hear the next words, but his voice still carried to Elena. If I ever hear that you've contacted Elena again, if I ever hear you've threatened her, or scared her, or made her feel unsafe in any way, I will personally ensure that you regret it for the rest of your life, and that life will be significantly shorter than you're currently planning. Do we understand each other? Marcus nodded jerkily. His face had gone from red to white, and his hands were shaking. Good. Now get out of my sight. Victor stepped back. James, make sure Mr. Chen finds his way home and stays there. Yes, sir. James took Marcus by the arm, gently this time, almost politely, and steered him toward the door. Marcus looked back once at Elena. She expected to see rage in his eyes, or hatred, or the obsessive need that had driven him to stalk her for 2 years. Instead, she saw defeat, saw a man who'd finally run into someone more dangerous than himself, and realized he was outmatched. Then he was gone, and Elena was standing in the middle of the bookstore with her hands shaking and her heart racing, and Victor watching her with those dark, unreadable eyes. Are you all right? Victor asked quietly. Elena tried to answer, but no words came out. She'd just faced down Marcus, had stood her ground and told him she wasn't his anymore. And now the adrenaline was crashing through her system like a tidal wave. Her legs felt weak, her vision blurred at the edges. Victor caught her elbow, steady and solid. Let's get you out of here. He guided her toward the door, past the staring customers and the wide-eyed cashier. Marco appeared with the SUV, and Victor helped Elena into the back seat, then slid in beside her. The door closed, and suddenly they were moving, leaving the bookstore and Marcus and the entire nightmare behind. Elena couldn't stop shaking. Great, racking tremors that made her teeth chatter. Victor pulled off his suit jacket and draped it over her shoulders, then handed her a bottle of water from somewhere. Breathe, he said, the same instruction he'd given her 2 nights ago in his office. Slow breaths. You're safe now. Is it really over? Elena managed between breaths. Just like that? Just like that. Victor's voice was certain. Marcus isn't stupid enough to ignore my warning. He knows what I'm capable of. He'll leave the city tonight, and you'll never see him again. How can you be so sure? Because I made him more afraid of me than he's ever been of anything in his life. Victor's expression was grim. Fear is a powerful motivator, and right now, Marcus is very, very afraid. Elena pulled the jacket tighter around her shoulders, breathing in the scent of expensive cologne and something else, leather and smoke and danger. What you said in there about making his life shorter, did you mean it? Victor looked at her for a long moment. Do you want the comforting lie or the uncomfortable truth? The truth, always the truth. Then yes. I meant every word. If Marcus ever threatens you again, I'll kill him. Victor's voice was matter-of-fact, like he was discussing the weather. Not because I'm violent by nature, but because some people only understand one language. Marcus is one of those people, and now he knows I speak that language fluently. Elena should have been horrified, should have recoiled from the casual way Victor talked about murder. Instead, she felt a strange sense of safety settle over her shoulders along with his jacket. Thank you, she whispered, for protecting me, for standing up to him, for making him leave. You don't need to thank me for doing the right thing. Victor reached over and took her hand, his grip warm and solid. You stood up to him too, Elena. What you said in that bookstore, telling him you were done being afraid, that took real courage. I was terrified the entire time. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's acting despite the fear. Victor squeezed her hand once, then released it. You did well tonight. Better than well. You were magnificent. The words settled into Elena's chest like a warm coal, burning away some of the lingering fear. She'd been magnificent. She'd faced Marcus and hadn't broken, hadn't run, hadn't let him see how scared she was. The SUV pulled up outside her building, and James opened the door. Ms. Elena, Mr. Moretti, I'll be in the lobby if you need anything. They rode the elevator in silence. Elena was suddenly, overwhelmingly exhausted, like every ounce of energy had drained out of her body. When they reached the penthouse, she walked straight to the windows and stared out at the city while Victor moved around behind her, making quiet phone calls. Yes, keep eyes on him until he leaves the city limits. I want confirmation when he crosses state lines. No, if he changes his mind about leaving, implement option 2 immediately. Elena listened to the coded language, understanding enough to know that Marcus was being monitored, tracked, watched to ensure he followed through. Victor wasn't taking any chances, wasn't leaving anything to luck or hope. When he finally ended the calls, he came to stand beside her at the windows. It really is over, isn't it? Elena said softly. I'm actually free. You're free. Victor's reflection in the glass looked tired but satisfied. Marcus will be gone by morning. My people will track him for the next few months to ensure he doesn't double back. And after that, you can decide what you want to do with your life. Elena turned to look at him directly. What if I want to stay here? In the city? Then you stay. The penthouse is yours for as long as you need it. I can't afford this place, Victor. You know that. Consider it part of your employment package. Victor smiled slightly. I still need someone who makes decent espresso, remember? Is that really all you want from me? The question came out before Elena could stop it. You've done so much, protected me, housed me, bought me clothes and computers, and faced down Marcus without asking for anything in return. Why? Victor was quiet for a long moment, his expression thoughtful. You remind me of someone, he said finally. My mother. The way she looked after my father hurt her. The fear in her eyes, the way she jumped at loud noises. He paused. I couldn't save her when I was 16, couldn't do enough, fast enough, to protect her from every threat. But I can save you. And maybe that makes up for the times I failed her. The raw honesty in his voice made Elena's chest ache. Your mother, is she? She's alive, safe, living in a house I bought her in the countryside, far away from the city and my father's memory. Victor's jaw tightened. She's happy now, or as happy as someone can be after living through what she endured. But I see the scars sometimes, the way she still flinches when someone moves too quickly. 20 years later, and she's still affected by what he did to her. I'm sorry, Elena whispered, for what happened to her, and for what you had to witness. Don't be sorry, be free. Victor turned to face her fully. That's all I want from you, Elena. I want you to live without fear, to make choices because you want to, not because you're running from something. To wake up in the morning and not immediately think about where Marcus might be or when he'll find you again. I can do that now, Elena realized. I can actually do that. Yes, you can. Victor moved toward the elevator. Get some rest. You've earned it. Victor? Elena stopped him before he could press the button. What you did tonight, making Marcus leave instead of just having him arrested, that was mercy, wasn't it? You could have destroyed him completely, but you gave him a way out. Victor considered this. I gave him the same choice I wish someone had given my father, a chance to walk away and start over. Whether he takes that chance or squanders it is up to him, but at least he has the option. And if he doesn't take it, then I'll handle it. Victor's voice was final. But that's not your concern anymore. Your only job now is to figure out what comes next for Elena Cruz. The elevator doors closed, and Elena was alone again. But this time, the solitude felt different, not frightening or oppressive, but peaceful. She walked through the penthouse, touching the furniture, looking at the books Victor had bought her, the clothes hanging in her closet. For 2 years, she'd lived out of boxes, ready to run at a moment's notice. Now she could unpack, could breathe, could start planning a future instead of just surviving the present. Her phone buzzed with a text from a number she didn't recognize. Elena's heart jumped before she remembered that Marcus was gone, that he couldn't hurt her anymore. She opened the message. It was from James. A single sentence and a photo. Target has left the city. You're clear. The photo showed Marcus's car heading west on the interstate, the license plate clearly visible, a timestamp showing it was taken 20 minutes ago. Elena stared at the photo for a long time. Then she deleted it, blocked the number Marcus had used to terrorize her, and threw away the old prepaid phone she'd bought to stay hidden. She didn't need to hide anymore. She was under Victor Moretti's protection, and in this city, that meant something. Meant safety. Meant freedom. Meant the nightmare was finally, truly over. Elena walked to her bedroom and unpacked the last of her boxes, hanging up clothes and arranging books on the shelf and setting her mother's photo on the nightstand, making the space her own, making it home. And when she finally crawled into bed that night, she fell asleep without fear, without nightmares, without a knife under her pillow. Just sleep, deep and peaceful and dreamless, free. 3 weeks passed in a strange, suspended reality. Elena woke each morning in the penthouse and had to remind herself that this was real, that she was actually safe, that Marcus was gone and not coming back. The first few days had been the hardest. Every sound made her jump, every shadow made her flinch. But gradually, slowly, the hypervigilance began to fade. Victor checked in daily, sometimes in person, sometimes via text. He never stayed long, never pushed for more than she was ready to give. Just made sure she had everything she needed and reminded her that his offer to return to work stood whenever she was ready. Elena appreciated the space, but she also found herself looking forward to his visits, to the quiet conversations over coffee, and the way he made her feel safe without making her feel fragile. She'd started leaving the penthouse after the first week, venturing out with James at her side. Small trips at first, the bookstore, the coffee shop, a walk through the park. Each excursion felt like reclaiming a piece of herself that Marcus had stolen. By the third week, she was going out alone, though she knew James or someone from Victor's security team was always watching from a distance. It was during one of these solo walks that Elena realized something had shifted inside her. She was standing in front of a small art gallery on a quiet street corner, looking at paintings in the window. When the thought struck her, she wasn't looking over her shoulder anymore. Wasn't scanning faces in the crowd for Marcus's features. Wasn't planning escape routes or counting exits. She was just living. The realization made her chest tight with something that felt like grief and relief mixed together. 2 years of her life had been consumed by fear, and now that the fear was gone, she didn't quite know what to do with all the empty space it left behind. Elena pulled out her phone and texted Victor before she could second-guess herself. "Can we talk? I'm ready to discuss what comes next." The response came within seconds. "Dinner tonight, 7 p.m. I'll pick you up." Elena spent the rest of the day trying not to overthink what comes next actually meant. Did she want to go back to waitressing? She'd been good at it, had enjoyed the rhythm of busy shifts and the satisfaction of making customers happy. But something about returning to her old life felt like stepping backward instead of forward. She was still wrestling with these thoughts when the elevator doors opened at 7 p.m. sharp and Victor stepped out. He'd clearly come straight from some kind of business meeting. Expensive charcoal suit, dark blue tie, his hair slightly disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it. "Bad day?" Elena asked, noticing the tension around his eyes. "Complicated day." Victor's expression softened when he looked at her. "But it's improving. Are you ready to go?" "Where are we going?" "Somewhere we can talk without interruption." He held out his hand. "Trust me?" Elena took his hand without hesitation, marveling at how natural the gesture felt. A month ago, she would have flinched at unexpected touch. Now she found herself leaning into Victor's solid presence as they rode the elevator down to the waiting car. The restaurant was on the top floor of a building downtown, all floor-to-ceiling windows and understated elegance. The maitre d' greeted Victor by name and led them to a private corner table with a view of the entire city spread out below like a carpet of lights. "This is beautiful," Elena said, settling into her chair. "I thought you might appreciate the view." Victor ordered wine without looking at the menu. Clearly, he'd been here before. "And the privacy. We can talk freely here." The wine arrived, was poured, and the waiter disappeared. Elena took a sip and let the smooth warmth settle in her chest before speaking. "I've been thinking about what I want to do next," she began, "and I realized I don't actually know. For 2 years, all I wanted was to be safe. Now that I am, I feel lost." "That's normal." Victor swirled his wine thoughtfully. "When you've been in survival mode for that long, it takes time to remember what it's like to actually live instead of just survive." "Is that what happened to you after your father?" Victor's jaw tightened slightly, but he didn't deflect the question. "Yes. I spent years building walls, creating distance, making sure I was powerful enough that no one could ever hurt me or the people I cared about again. By the time I succeeded, I'd forgotten what I actually wanted beyond safety and control. And now, have you figured it out?" "I'm still working on it." Victor met her eyes across the table. "But I've learned that power without purpose is just noise. So I try to use what I have to protect people who need protecting, fix problems that need fixing. It's not altruism. I'm not a good man, Elena. But I can choose to do good things with the resources I have." "You protected me. That's good." "I protected you because I couldn't protect my mother. That's not the same as goodness. That's just trying to balance a scale that will never actually be even." Victor paused as their food arrived, pasta for both of them, the kind that looked like art on the plate. "But enough about my motivations. What do you want, Elena? Not what you think you should want or what makes practical sense. What do you actually want?" Elena stabbed at her pasta, considering. "I want to feel useful. Like I'm doing something that matters. Waitressing was fine, but it never felt like it was making a difference in anyone's life. I just brought people food and smiled at their jokes." "You brought people more than food. You brought them safety." Victor's voice was quiet but firm. "I watched you with customers, Elena. You were kind to the elderly couples, patient with the difficult ones, gentle with people who were clearly having bad days. You made my restaurant feel warm and welcoming. That matters." "Maybe." Elena took a bite of pasta to give herself time to think. "But I want something more. I just don't know what that is yet." "Then take your time figuring it out. You have resources now, money saved from your paychecks, and I'll continue covering your expenses until you're on your feet. Use this time to explore options." Victor leaned back in his chair. "What did you want to be before Marcus? Before everything went wrong?" The question hit Elena harder than she'd expected. She set down her fork carefully. "I wanted to be a teacher. Elementary school. I loved working with kids, seeing them learn and grow. I was 2 years into my degree when I met Marcus." "And you gave it up?" "Ma, he didn't like the idea of me working with other people's children. Said I should focus on our future family instead." The bitterness in Elena's voice surprised her. "I was young and stupid and in love, so I dropped out. Started waitressing to pay bills while he worked construction. And by the time I realized what a mistake I'd made, it was too late to go back." "It's not too late now." Victor pulled out his phone, typed something quickly. "The City University has a teaching program. Applications for spring semester are still open. You'd need to complete your degree, but with your previous credits, you'd be looking at maybe 2 years, 3 at most. Elena stared at him. I can't afford university, not even with what I've saved. I can. Victor met her gaze steadily. Consider it an investment. You finish your degree, become a teacher, make a difference in children's lives. That seems like exactly the kind of useful you were talking about. Oh, Victor, I can't let you pay for my education. That's too much. Why is it too much? I've spent more on a single business dinner than your entire degree would cost. Victor's voice was gentle but firm. Elena, I have money I'll never spend, resources I'll never exhaust. Letting them help you become what you were meant to be isn't charity. It's using power for purpose. Let me do this. Elena felt tears prick at her eyes. Why are you being so good to me? And don't tell me it's because I remind you of your mother. This is more than that. Victor was quiet for a long moment, his dark eyes searching her face. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and careful. Because somewhere in the last 3 weeks, you've become important to me. Not as someone to protect or a problem to solve, but as someone I genuinely care about. And I want to see you thrive, Elena. I want to watch you become the person you were meant to be before trauma and violence stole that chance from you. The honesty in his words stole Elena's breath. She'd known there was something building between them, the lingering looks, the way they'd started spending more time together even after Marcus was gone, the comfortable silences that felt more intimate than conversation. But hearing Victor acknowledge it out loud made it real in a way that was both thrilling and terrifying. I care about you too, Elena said quietly. But I don't know how to separate gratitude from actual feelings. You saved my life, Victor. How do I know what I'm feeling is real and not just trauma bonding or misplaced hero worship? You don't. Not yet. Victor reached across the table and took her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. That's why I'm not asking you for anything, Elena. I'm offering you a chance to build the life you want. If that life includes me, I'll be grateful. If it doesn't, I'll still be here as a friend and supporter. No pressure, no expectations, just possibilities. Elena looked down at their joined hands, at the way his long fingers wrapped around hers with gentle strength. What if I want to explore those possibilities? What if I want to see where this goes between us? Then we take it slow. We build trust and friendship first. We let you finish healing and figuring out who you are when you're not running or afraid. Victor squeezed her hand. I've waited 16 years to build something real with someone. I can wait however long it takes for you to be ready. 16 years? Since my father. Since I promised myself I'd never become him. Never let violence and control define my relationships. Victor's expression was serious. I've had relationships, Elena. But I've never let anyone close enough to matter, never trusted anyone enough to be vulnerable with them. You're the first person in a very long time I want to try with. The weight of that confession settled between them like a third presence at the table. Elena realized with sudden clarity that Victor was just as scared as she was, just as uncertain about navigating something real and honest. He had his own walls, his own trauma, his own reasons for keeping people at arm's length, and he was choosing to lower those walls for her. Okay, Elena said softly. Let's take it slow. Let's see where this goes. Victor's smile was small but genuine, transforming his usually serious face into something warmer. Good. Now finish your pasta before it gets cold and tell me what subject you want to teach. They spent the rest of dinner talking about safer topics. Elena's dream of teaching 2nd or 3rd grade. Victor's favorite memories of the teachers who'd helped him as a kid. The challenges and rewards of working with children. Elena found herself laughing more than she had in years, relaxing into the conversation, forgetting to be afraid or worried or anxious. By the time dessert arrived, tiramisu that was even better than the one served at Victor's restaurant, Elena felt lighter than she had in months, maybe years. I'll apply to the university tomorrow, she said, taking a bite of the rich, coffee-soaked cake. And I'll accept your help with tuition, but I want to pay you back eventually, when I'm teaching and making my own money. If that makes you feel better, we can draw up a repayment plan. Victor's tone suggested he didn't actually expect her to follow through, but he was willing to let her have the dignity of the offer. Though I'd rather you put that money toward your classroom. Teachers always end up buying supplies out of pocket. How do you know that? My mother was a teacher. Before my father. Victor's expression went distant. She loved it. Used to come home every day with stories about her students, things they'd said or done. She'd spend hours making lesson plans and cutting out construction paper decorations. He paused. After my father, she never went back. Said she couldn't face a classroom full of children when she felt so broken inside. Elena's heart clenched. I'm sorry. Don't be. She found other ways to help people. Volunteers at a community center now, teaches adult literacy classes. It's not the same, but it makes her happy. Victor met Elena's eyes. But I think she'd like knowing that she inspired someone else to teach, that her story helped you find your way back to your dream. Then I'll make sure it counts. I'll be the best teacher I can be. Elena raised her wine glass. To second chances. Victor clinked his glass against hers. To second chances and new beginnings. They finished dessert and left the restaurant, stepping out into the cool November night. Elena shivered slightly, and Victor immediately shrugged off his suit jacket and draped it over her shoulders, the same gesture he'd made in the SUV after the confrontation with Marcus. It was becoming familiar, this small act of care, and Elena found herself leaning into it. Thank you for dinner, she said as they walked toward the waiting car. And for everything else. The education offer, the honesty about your feelings, giving me space to figure myself out. You don't need to thank me for treating you like you deserve to be treated. Victor opened the car door for her. That should be the baseline, not the exception. They rode back to the penthouse in comfortable silence, Elena's head resting against the window as she watched the city slide past. When they arrived, Victor walked her up to the apartment even though he didn't need to, even though James was waiting in the lobby. The elevator doors opened into the penthouse, and Elena stepped out, then turned to face Victor. He stayed in the elevator, one hand holding the door open, clearly planning to leave. But something in Elena's chest pulled tight at the thought of him going. Stay, she said before she could overthink it. Just for a little while. We could have coffee, talk more. I'm not ready for the evening to end yet. Victor's expression shifted, something warm and almost vulnerable flickering across his features. Are you sure? I'm sure. Elena stepped back, giving him space to enter. Besides, you bought me that fancy espresso machine. Seems like a waste not to use it. Victor stepped out of the elevator and the doors closed behind him. Elena moved to the kitchen and started making coffee, hyper-aware of Victor's presence as he loosened his tie and rolled up his sleeves. The gesture felt intimate somehow, like she was seeing a side of him he didn't show the world. Can I ask you something? Elena said as the espresso machine hissed and steamed. About your business, the parts that exist in gray areas. Victor leaned against the counter, his expression carefully neutral. You can ask. I may not be able to answer everything, but I'll be honest about what I can tell you. Are you in danger? The kind of danger that could come back on people close to you? Elena poured 2 cappuccinos with shaking hands. Because I need to know what I'm getting into if we're going to explore these possibilities between us. Yes, Victor's voice was blunt. I have enemies. People who would use anyone I care about to get to me. That's why I've kept my personal life separate from my business for so long. Why I've never let anyone get close enough to become a target. But you're letting me get close. Because you're already a target by virtue of being under my protection. Marcus made that connection public when he came to my restaurant. Everyone who knows me knows you're important to me now. Victor took the cappuccino she offered, his fingers brushing hers. So the danger exists whether we pursue this or not. At least this way, if we do pursue it, you get the full picture of what you're accepting. Elena sat on one of the kitchen stools, cradling her cup. What would that danger look like, specifically? Surveillance, attempts to use you to gather information or leverage against me. In extreme cases, kidnapping or threats. Victor's voice was matter-of-fact, like he was discussing weather patterns. But I have extensive security measures in place. The people who work for me are loyal and well-trained, and anyone who tried to hurt you would be making the last mistake of their life. The certainty in his voice should have frightened Elena. Instead, she found it oddly comforting. You'd kill for me. Without hesitation. Victor met her eyes steadily. I've killed for less worthy reasons. Protecting someone I care about would barely register as a moral dilemma. That should scare me, but it doesn't. Victor took a sip of his cappuccino. Why not? Elena considered the question carefully. Because I've seen the other side. I've lived with someone who used violence to control and hurt. Marcus hit me because he was angry, because I didn't obey fast enough, because he could. But your violence has purpose. It protects people. It solves problems. It's not about power over someone weaker. It's about making sure the weak are protected from predators. You're romanticizing what I do. Victor's voice was gentle but firm. I'm not a hero, Elena. I run illegal operations. I profit from activities that hurt people. I've done things that would horrify you if you knew the details. Don't mistake calculated violence for righteousness. I'm not romanticizing anything. I'm just saying I understand the difference between someone who uses power to hurt and someone who uses power to protect. Elena set down her cup. You gave Marcus a choice, Victor. You could have destroyed him completely, but you offered him a way out. That tells me something about who you are underneath all the gray areas and calculated violence. Victor looked at her for a long moment, something unreadable in his dark eyes. You see the best in people. That's dangerous in my world. Maybe. But it's also necessary. Elena stood and moved closer to him, close enough to see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. Everyone in your life probably tells you what you want to hear or what benefits them. I'm choosing to tell you the truth as I see it. You're a good man trying very hard to pretend you're not, and I appreciate the honesty about the dangers, but I'm not going anywhere. Even knowing you could be targeted? Even knowing that. Elena reached up and touched his face, her fingers tracing the scar above his eyebrow. I've spent 2 years being afraid. I'm done letting fear make my choices for me. If being with you comes with risks, I'll learn to manage them, together. Victor's hand came up to cover hers, pressing her palm against his cheek. You're sure about this? About me? I'm not sure about anything except that I want to try. Want to see where this goes between us. Elena smiled slightly. Besides, you promised to take it slow. That gives us time to figure out if this is real or if I'm just grateful to my rescuer. I can do slow. Victor turned his head and pressed a kiss to her palm, the gesture so tender it made Elena's breath catch. But fair warning, I've never been good at sharing my life with someone. I'll probably mess this up in spectacular ways. Then we'll mess it up together and figure it out as we go. Elena stepped back reluctantly. Now finish your coffee and tell me about the university application process. If I'm going to become a teacher, I need to know what I'm getting into. They spent the next 2 hours at the kitchen counter, Victor pulling up information on his phone, while Elena took notes on the tablet he'd given her. Course requirements, application deadlines, financial aid options that Victor waved away with a dismissive gesture. By the time he finally left at midnight, Elena had a complete plan for finishing her degree and a timeline that had her student teaching within 2 years. She also had the ghost of Victor's kiss still tingling on her palm, and the warmth of his genuine smile burned into her memory. Elena got ready for bed feeling lighter than she had in years. She was going back to school. She was pursuing her dream of teaching. She was building something real with a man who understood darkness, but chose to use his power for protection rather than control. Her phone buzzed just as she was climbing into bed. A text from Victor. Thank you for tonight, for your honesty and your courage, and your willingness to see me as more than the sum of my worst choices. Sleep well, Elena. I'll see you tomorrow. Elena typed back quickly. Thank you for giving me a future worth planning for. See you tomorrow. She set the phone on the nightstand and turned off the light, settling into the expensive sheets with a smile on her face. Outside the windows, the city glowed with a million lights, each one representing a life, a story, a possibility. 3 weeks ago, Elena had been terrified that her story would end in violence. Now she was writing a new chapter entirely, one where she got to choose her own path forward, one where she had support and safety and the chance to become who she was always meant to be. And maybe, just maybe, one where she fell in love with a dangerous man who made her feel safer than she'd ever felt in her life. The thought should have scared her. Instead, it felt like coming home. Elena closed her eyes and let sleep take her, dreaming of classrooms full of children and a future that finally belonged to her. The university acceptance letter arrived on a Tuesday morning 6 weeks after Elena had submitted her application. She stared at the email on her laptop screen for a full minute, reading the words over and over to make sure they were real. We are pleased to inform you that you have been accepted into the elementary education program for the spring semester. Her hands were shaking when she called Victor. He picked up on the second ring, his voice crisp with the professional tone he used during business hours. Elena, everything okay? I got in. The words came out breathless, disbelieving. Victor, I got into the program. I'm going back to school. The silence on the other end lasted just long enough for Elena to worry, then Victor's voice came back warm and genuinely pleased. That's incredible. Congratulations. When do you start? January 15th, 6 weeks. Elena scrolled through the email, her heart racing. I need to register for classes, buy books, figure out childcare placements for observation hours. There's so much to do and I don't even know where to start. Start by celebrating. I'll pick you up at 7. We're going out. Victor paused, and Elena could hear voices in the background, someone asking him a question. I have to go handle something, but Elena, I'm proud of you. This is just the beginning. The call ended before Elena could respond, but the warmth in Victor's voice stayed with her all day. She spent the afternoon researching her required courses, making lists, planning out her schedule for the next 2 years. It felt surreal. She was actually doing this, actually building the life she'd dreamed about before Marcus had torn everything apart. When Victor arrived that evening, he was carrying a wrapped box and wearing a smile that made him look years younger. What's this? Elena asked, taking the box. Open it and find out. Inside was a leather messenger bag, the kind professors carried, with her initials embossed on the front. Elena ran her fingers over the smooth leather, feeling tears prick at her eyes. For carrying all those textbooks and lesson plans, Victor said quietly. Every teacher needs a good bag. It's perfect. Elena set the bag carefully on the counter and moved to hug him, wrapping her arms around his waist. Victor stiffened for just a second. He always did when she initiated physical contact, like he still couldn't quite believe she wanted to touch him, then relaxed and pulled her closer. Thank you, Elena murmured against his chest. For everything. The education, the support, the belief that I could actually do this. You did this yourself. I just removed the obstacles. Victor's hand came up to stroke her hair. Now come on. We have reservations. Dinner was at a small French restaurant Elena had never heard of, the kind of place that didn't advertise because the people who needed to know about it already did. They celebrated with champagne and duck confit and creme brulee, talking about Elena's class schedule and her nervousness about being back in a classroom after so many years. What if I'm terrible at it? Elena asked, breaking through the caramelized sugar on her dessert. What if I've romanticized the whole thing and I actually hate teaching? Then you'll figure that out and adjust accordingly. Victor's voice was pragmatic. But I don't think you will. I've seen you with children at the restaurant, the way you talked to that little girl whose parents were fighting, how you made that crying toddler laugh. You're a natural, Elena. You just need the credentials to prove it. You really think so? I know so. Victor reached across the table and took her hand. And if it helps, I'll be here for every step. The late-night study sessions, the stress of exams, the inevitable breakdown when you're writing your first lesson plan. All of it. Elena squeezed his hand, marveling at how far they'd come in 6 weeks. They'd been taking it slow like Victor had promised, dinners and coffee dates, long conversations that stretched into the early morning, careful explorations of each other's boundaries and histories. Victor had been patient, never pushing for more than Elena was ready to give, letting her set the pace. But somewhere along the way, patient had turned into genuine. The careful distance had become comfortable intimacy. And Elena had realized she wasn't just grateful to Victor anymore. She was falling in love with him. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. Victor? She waited until he looked up from his own dessert. I think I'm ready. Ready for what? Ready to stop taking it slow. Ready to admit that what I feel for you isn't gratitude or trauma bonding or hero worship. Elena's heart was pounding, but she forced herself to hold his gaze. I'm in love with you, and I think I have been for a while now. I just needed time to trust that it was real. Victor went very still, his dark eyes searching her face. Elena, you don't have to say it back. I know this is complicated and messy, and you have your own walls to work through. Elena's words were coming faster now, nervous energy making her rush. But I needed you to know, needed to be honest about what I'm feeling before we go any further. Stop talking, Victor said softly. Then he was standing, moving around the table, pulling Elena to her feet. His hands came up to frame her face, his thumbs brushing her cheekbones. I love you too. Have loved you since the night you stood up to Marcus in that bookstore and told him you were done being afraid. Maybe even before that. And I've been terrified of saying it because everyone I've ever loved has gotten hurt. I'm not going to get hurt. Elena covered his hands with hers. You won't let that happen. No, I won't. Victor's voice was fierce with promise. But loving me comes with complications, Elena. My world is dangerous. There are people who would use you to get to me. Are you sure you're ready for that? I'm sure. Elena rose on her toes and kissed him, soft and brief and full of certainty. I choose this. I choose you, complications and all. Victor kissed her back, deeper this time, one hand sliding into her hair while the other wrapped around her waist. It was their first real kiss. They'd shared brief touches before, careful explorations, but this was different. This was claiming and promising and choosing each other with full knowledge of what that meant. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Victor rested his forehead against hers. Come home with me tonight, he said quietly. Not the penthouse. My actual home. I want you to see where I live, who I am when I'm not being careful. Elena's heart raced. Victor had mentioned his place before but had never invited her there. The fact that he was doing so now felt significant, like crossing a threshold they couldn't uncross. Okay, she whispered. Take me home. Victor's home turned out to be a converted warehouse in the industrial district, all exposed brick and high ceilings and windows that overlooked the river. It was nothing like the penthouse. This was personal, lived in, full of small details that spoke to who Victor really was. Books stacked on every surface, a state-of-the-art sound system, abstract paintings that probably cost a fortune but were hung casually like he'd just liked the colors. This is you, Elena said, turning slowly to take it all in. The real you. The real me is messier than I like to admit. Victor moved to the kitchen and poured them both whiskey. I let people see the polished version, the suits, the control, the calculated violence. But here, I get to just be Victor. Not Victor Moretti who runs half the city. Just a man who likes jazz and terrible action movies and reading philosophy at 3 a.m. when he can't sleep. Elena accepted the whiskey and sat on the leather couch that dominated the living room. I like this version of you, the one who's messy and human. You haven't seen messy yet. Victor sat beside her, close enough that their thighs touched. I'm controlling and paranoid and I work too much. I'll probably try to micromanage your life because that's how I keep people safe. And I have enemies, Elena. Real enemies who would celebrate getting a chance to hurt me by hurting you. Then we'll deal with them together. Elena set down her glass and turned to face him fully. Victor, I'm not naive. I know your world is dangerous. But I also know that you're the most protective person I've ever met. And I trust you to keep me safe while still letting me have my own life. I'll try. Victor's hand came up to cup her cheek. But you have to promise me something. If this ever becomes too much, if my world ever makes you feel trapped or afraid, you tell me. You don't just endure it because you think you owe me something. Promise me. I promise. Elena leaned into his touch. And you have to promise me the same thing. If having me in your life puts you in danger or makes your work harder, you tell me. We figure it out together or we figure out how to let each other go. No martyrdom on either side. Deal. Victor pulled her closer, kissing her again with the kind of intensity that made Elena's whole body respond. They stayed like that for a long time, kissing and touching and learning each other's boundaries with gentle patience. When Victor finally pulled back, his voice was rough. Stay tonight. Just sleep. I'm not asking for more than you're ready to give, but I want to wake up with you here, so want to know what it's like to have you in my space. Elena stayed. They fell asleep tangled together on Victor's enormous bed, her head on his chest, his arm wrapped protectively around her waist. And when Elena woke in the morning to sunlight streaming through industrial windows and Victor's steady heartbeat under her ear, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. She felt home. The next few weeks passed in a blur of happiness that Elena kept waiting to end. She started classes, diving into child development theory and educational psychology with an enthusiasm that surprised her professors. Victor helped her study, quizzing her on theorists and learning stages while they ate dinner at his warehouse or her penthouse. They fell into an easy rhythm, mornings apart, while Victor handled his business and Elena attended classes, evenings together talking about everything and nothing. James had been reassigned to other duties, though Elena knew Victor still had security watching her from a distance. She'd grown comfortable with the protection, had even started to recognize some of Victor's people in crowds. The tall woman who was always reading in the coffee shop near campus, the man who jogged the same route through the park every morning. They were ghosts in her peripheral vision, and their presence made her feel safe rather than trapped. It was perfect, almost too perfect. Elena kept waiting for something to go wrong, for Marcus to reappear, or for one of Victor's enemies to make a move, or for the darkness in Victor's world to finally reach out and touch her. The threat came on a Thursday in late January, 2 weeks into the new semester. Elena was walking across campus after her afternoon class when her phone rang, a number she didn't recognize. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Elena Cruz? The voice was male, smooth, with an accent she couldn't place. Who is this? A friend of Victor Moretti's, or perhaps an enemy. The line is often blurred in our business. The man chuckled softly. Victor has something I want. I thought perhaps we could make a trade. Elena's blood ran cold. She stopped walking, scanning the crowd of students around her. I don't know what you're talking about. Of course you do. You're a smart woman. Victor's smart woman, from what I hear. The voice remained pleasant, conversational. I have information he needs. Information about a mutual associate who's been stealing from both of us. In exchange, I'd like Victor to step back from a certain territory dispute. Nothing violent, just a peaceful redistribution of resources. Call Victor yourself if you want to negotiate. I tried. He wasn't receptive, but I thought perhaps if the request came from you, he might be more accommodating. The pleasant tone developed an edge. After all, he seems quite fond of you. It would be unfortunate if his stubbornness led to unpleasant consequences for people he cares about. Elena's heart was racing, but she forced her voice to stay calm. Are you threatening me? I'm presenting options. Victor can agree to my very reasonable terms, or we can see how committed he is to protecting you when there are real costs involved. The man paused. You have until midnight to deliver my message. After that, I'll assume Victor values his pride more than your safety. And Elena, don't bother trying to trace this call. I'll be in touch. The line went dead. Elena stood frozen on the busy campus walkway, students streaming past her on their way to classes and libraries and normal lives. Her hands were shaking so badly she nearly dropped her phone. This was what Victor had warned her about. This was the danger that came with loving someone who operated in gray areas. She called Victor immediately. He picked up on the first ring, his voice sharp with concern. Elena? What's wrong? Someone just called me. A man. He said he's a friend or enemy of yours. He wasn't clear which. Elena walked quickly toward the parking lot where James was waiting with the car. He wants you to back off some territory dispute in exchange for information. Said if you don't agree by midnight, there will be consequences for people you care about. The silence on the other end was absolute. Then Victor's voice came back, low and deadly cold. Where are you? Campus. I'm heading to the car now. Get in the car. Have James bring you to the warehouse. Don't stop anywhere. Don't talk to anyone. Victor was clearly moving. Elena could hear doors opening and closing. Did the man give you a name? No, just said you'd know who he was. I know. Victor's voice was grim. Elena, I need you to listen to me very carefully. This is going to get handled tonight, permanently. But I need you somewhere safe while that happens. Can you trust me? Always. Elena climbed into the SUV, nodding to James. I trust you completely. Good. I'll see you soon. And Elena, I love you. Remember that, no matter what happens next. The call ended, leaving Elena staring at her phone with her heart in her throat. James was already driving, taking a route that avoided main streets and kept them moving constantly. Elena realized with a start that he'd been listening to the entire conversation through his own earpiece. "Mr. Moretti will handle this," James said quietly. "He always does." They reached the warehouse in 15 minutes. Victor was waiting outside, along with a half-dozen men Elena recognized from various security details. He pulled open her door before the car even stopped moving, his hands running over her shoulders and face like he needed to confirm she was unhurt. "I'm okay," Elena said quickly. "He didn't touch me, didn't even say where he was, just made threats." That's his style. Dmitry Volkov. He runs the Russian operations in the port district. We've been in negotiations over shipping routes for 6 months. Victor pulled Elena close, his arms wrapping around her protectively. He must have gotten desperate to make a move like this. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to remind him why threatening people I love is a fatal mistake." Victor's voice was cold enough to make Elena shiver. "But first, I need to know you're safe. Marco, take Elena inside. Full security protocols. No one in or out without my direct authorization." "Yes, sir." Marco, the Italian man from Elena's confrontation with Marcus, appeared at her elbow. "Ms. Cruz, if you'll come with me." Elena let herself be guided into the warehouse, but she looked back at Victor. He was already on his phone, issuing orders in a low, clipped tone. His expression was harder than she'd ever seen it, all traces of warmth and humanity locked away behind walls of ice and calculation. This was Victor Moretti, the crime boss, the man who operated in gray areas and made people disappear. This was the part of him she'd known existed but hadn't really seen until now. And Elena realized with sudden clarity that she wasn't afraid of him. She was afraid for him, for what he might have to do tonight to keep her safe. But the man himself, the cold calculation and controlled violence, that didn't scare her at all. "Miss Cruz?" Marco was waiting by the interior door. "Please." Elena followed him inside and spent the next 4 hours pacing the warehouse living space while Marco and 2 other guards maintained watch. She tried to study, couldn't focus, tried to eat, couldn't stomach food, just paced and worried and waited for Victor to come back. He finally returned at 11 p.m., looking exhausted but uninjured. Elena was across the room in seconds, her hands running over him, checking for damage. "I'm fine," Victor said, catching her hands and bringing them to his lips. "Dmitry won't be making threats anymore. The situation is handled." "What did you do?" "I gave him a choice, just like I gave Marcus. He could back off, and we'd forget this ever happened. Or he could continue making threats and learn why that's a bad idea." Victor's jaw tightened. He chose poorly, so I made the choice for him. Elena searched his face. "Is he dead?" "No, but he's leaving the city permanently, along with his entire operation. I have contacts who were happy to explain the consequences of threatening my family." Victor pulled Elena closer. "You're safe, Elena. This is over. Until the next threat, until the next enemy decides to use me as leverage." Elena's voice was quiet but steady. "This is the reality, isn't it? This is what loving you means." Victor's expression went carefully blank. "Yes, this is the reality. And if it's too much, if you want out, I'll understand. I'll make sure you're protected, make sure you can finish school safely. But I won't force you to live in my world if it's too dangerous." Elena looked at him for a long moment, at the man who'd saved her from Marcus and believed in her dreams and loved her with fierce protectiveness. The man who'd just spent 4 hours dealing with threats and violence so she could be safe. The man who was offering to let her go, even though it clearly hurt him to do it. "I'm not going anywhere," Elena said firmly. "This was scary, yes. But Victor, I've lived with real terror. I know what it's like to be with someone who uses fear as a weapon. This isn't that. You're not using violence to control me. You're using it to protect me. There's a difference. The outcome can be the same. You trapped in a dangerous situation because of me." "No." Elena put her hands on either side of his face, making him look at her. "I'm choosing this, choosing you, with full knowledge of what your world looks like. And yes, it's scary. But you know what's scarier? Living without you. Going back to being alone and afraid and not having this," she gestured between them, "this partnership we've built. So no, I'm not leaving. We're doing this together." Victor's carefully controlled expression cracked, and Elena saw relief and love and something that might have been gratitude flood his features. He pulled her into a kiss that was less gentle than usual, rougher and more desperate, like he needed to prove to himself that she was real and safe and still choosing him. When they finally broke apart, Victor rested his forehead against hers. "I love you, and I promise I'll do everything in my power to keep you safe, even from my own world." "I know you will," Elena smiled slightly, "but I'm also going to learn to protect myself. Self-defense classes, awareness training, whatever I need to be a partner in this instead of just someone you protect." "You want to learn to fight?" Victor looked surprised. "I want to be able to defend myself if something happens when you're not there. I want to be prepared." Elena's voice was steady. "I'm done being a victim, Victor. Even a victim you're protecting. I want to be strong in my own right." Pride flickered across Victor's face. "I'll set it up. My best people will train you." He paused. "But Elena, you're already strong. You survived Marcus. You rebuilt your life 3 times. You're going back to school to chase your dreams. That takes a kind of strength most people never find." "Maybe. But I want to be stronger, for both of us." They spent that night at the warehouse, talking about safety protocols and realistic threats, and how to balance Elena's growing independence with Victor's need to keep her protected. It was a hard conversation, full of compromises and boundaries, but they navigated it together. Partners figuring out how to build a life that honored both their needs. Over the next few months, Elena threw herself into her studies, while also learning practical self-defense from Victor's security team. She discovered she had good instincts and quick reflexes, and the training made her feel capable in a way she'd never felt before. Victor watched her progress with obvious pride, never hovering but always available if she needed support. By the time spring semester ended, Elena had completed 8 courses with straight A's and could disarm an attacker 3 different ways. She'd also moved most of her belongings into Victor's warehouse, the penthouse becoming more of a backup location than a primary residence. They were building a life together, messy and complicated and sometimes dangerous, but theirs. Elena's student teaching placement started in the fall at an elementary school in a neighborhood Victor had significant influence in. The principal seemed to know exactly who Elena's partner was, but if he had opinions about it, he kept them to himself. What mattered was that Elena was good with the children, patient and creative, and genuinely invested in their success. Victor came to watch her teach one afternoon, sitting in the back of the 2nd grade classroom while Elena led a lesson on addition and subtraction. Watching her with those children, the way they lit up when she praised them, the gentle patience she showed the struggling students, Victor felt something shift in his chest. This was what he'd been protecting. Not just Elena's life, but her purpose, her ability to make a difference in the world. And somehow, against all odds, she'd made room in that purpose for him too. After class, they walked through the school parking lot, hand in hand. Elena was talking enthusiastically about one of her students who'd finally grasped a difficult concept, her whole face glowing with joy. "You're incredible with them," Victor said quietly. "Those kids are lucky to have you." "I'm lucky to have them, to have this." Elena squeezed his hand. "Thank you for making it possible." "You made it possible. I just removed obstacles." "We make a good team." Elena stopped walking and turned to face him. "In all things, don't we?" Victor pulled her close, kissing her right there in the parking lot with teachers and parents walking past. Let them see. Let everyone know that Elena Cruz was his and he was hers, and they'd chosen each other with full knowledge of the complications. "Yes," he said against her lips. "We make a very good team." 2 years later, Elena graduated with her teaching degree and accepted a full-time position at the same elementary school where she'd done her student teaching. Victor threw her a party at his restaurant, inviting her professors and classmates and the colleagues who'd become friends. He gave a toast that made Elena cry, talking about courage and second chances, and watching someone bloom into exactly who they were meant to be. That night, back at the warehouse, Victor led Elena out to the rooftop he'd converted into a garden. The city spread out around them, millions of lights representing millions of lives. Somewhere in all that chaos was the restaurant where Marcus had found her and Victor had stepped in. The bookstore where she'd faced down her fears. The university where she'd rebuilt her dreams. I have something for you, Victor said, pulling a small box from his pocket. Elena's heart stopped. Victor, let me finish. He opened the box to reveal a simple platinum band set with a single diamond. I know we've built something unconventional. I know my world comes with complications most people never have to navigate. But Elena, you've made me believe in things I thought were impossible, made me want things I thought I didn't deserve. So I'm asking you, with full knowledge of who I am and what my life looks like, will you marry me? Elena looked at the ring, at Victor's serious face, at the city glowing around them. Thought about the terrified woman who'd been holding a coffee pot 2 years ago, certain her life was about to end. That woman would never have believed she'd end up here. Successful, loved, standing on a rooftop with a man who'd helped her become the person she was always meant to be. Yes, Elena said, her voice strong and certain. Yes, I'll marry you. Victor slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into a kiss that tasted like promises and future, and choices made with open eyes. When they finally broke apart, Elena was laughing and crying at the same time. We're really doing this, she said, building a life together. We already built it. This is just making it official. Victor wiped the tears from her cheeks with gentle thumbs. I love you, Elena Cruz. Have loved you since you told Marcus you were done being afraid. We'll love you for whatever time we have together. I love you too. Elena leaned into his solid warmth. My dangerous, protective, surprisingly romantic crime boss. Businessman, Victor corrected with a slight smile, who operates in gray areas. Whatever you want to call it, I choose it. I choose you. I choose this life we've built together. Elena looked out at the city, at the future spread before them like a map waiting to be explored. No more running, no more fear, just us facing whatever comes next together. Together, Victor agreed, wrapping his arms around her from behind. Always together. They stood like that for a long time, two people who'd found each other in the darkness and chosen to build something bright. Elena's journey had started with terror behind a counter, but it was ending, or perhaps beginning, with love on a rooftop, with a man who understood her past and supported her future, with a partnership built on honesty and trust and the conscious choice to see each other clearly and love what they found. What had begun as protection had transformed into something deeper. Victor had taught Elena that she was worth fighting for. Elena had taught Victor that vulnerability wasn't weakness. Together, they'd created a life that honored both their strengths and acknowledged their scars. The night Marcus had walked into Moretti's, Elena had thought her story was ending. But she'd been wrong. It had just been the beginning of something better, something real, something worth all the fear and uncertainty and risk. She'd been afraid behind that counter, holding a coffee pot and praying it wouldn't shatter. Now she stood on a rooftop wearing an engagement ring, her hand steady and her heart full, and her future bright with possibility. Elena Cruz had spent 2 years running from her past. Now she was running toward her future, with Victor Moretti at her side and the whole world spread out before them, ready to be claimed. And she had never felt more free in her entire life.